A very good morning to you, and we are glad that you have made time to join us this morning for the Senate proceedings. This is the morning sitting on this 10th day of July, the year 2024. This is a live broadcast that is streaming from the Parliament buildings in Nairobi, and this broadcast is brought to you by the Parliamentary Broadcasting Unit in partnership with the Kenya Broadcasting Corporation. This morning, the senators are set to engage the Cabinet Secretary for Foreign and Diaspora Affairs. Remember, the Wednesday morning sitting was set aside or allocated for questions and statements that members of the Senate will be asking the Cabinet Secretaries to respond to a number of issues that affect either county, the national, regional, and inter-county. So this morning, the senators will be resuming this particular session where the Cabinet Secretaries will be appearing before the Senate or on the floor of the Senate to respond to various issues or concerns as raised by individual members. And this follows the amendment of the standing orders to pave way or to allow for the Cabinet Secretaries to be able to make their way here to be able to respond to those concerns. Remember, it has been a while since the senators engaged in this particular business, but this morning that business will be on, and the Cabinet Secretary who will be appearing before the Senate this morning, or is expected to appear before the Senate this morning, is the Cabinet Secretary, the Prime Cabinet Secretary, and the Cabinet Secretary for Foreign and Diaspora Affairs. This is Musalia Mudavadi. He will be responding to questions from the Senator for Kakamega, Honorable Dr. Boni Halwale, the Senator for Kisumu County, Professor Tom Ojenda, will also be asking the Prime Cabinet Secretary and the Cabinet Secretary for Foreign Affairs and Diaspora a few questions. Also, the Senator for Kirinyaga County, Honorable James Murango, and also the Senator for Siaya County. This is Honorable Dr. Oburu Odinga. Also the Senator for Nyamira County, Honorable Okongo Mogeni, will be asking questions to the Cabinet Secretary for Foreign Affairs and Diaspora, as well as the Prime Cabinet Secretary. The Honorable Senator for Vihiga County, Honorable Godfrey Osoti, will also be asking questions. Let's take a look at some of these questions that these members will be this morning expecting responses from the Prime Cabinet Secretary. The Senator for Kakamega County will be asking the Cabinet Secretary to disclose the number and identities of all Kenyans currently working in the Gulf states. Also, how many Kenyans have lost their lives while working in the Gulf states. That is from the year 2022 to date. Also, what support does the government provide to families of Kenyans who die while overseas? And could the Cabinet Secretary explain any actions being taken by the government to facilitate the repatriation of the body of Miss Mildred Busolo Lisanza, who is deceased, from Saudi Arabia to Malinya village in Kakamega County? These are questions that the Honorable Senator for Kakamega County will be seeking to have responses to by the Prime Cabinet Secretary, who is expected to appear before the Senate this morning to respond to various concerns as raised by the honorable senators. The Senator for Kisumu County will be seeking to understand from the Cabinet Secretary whether he could elaborate on the climate change initiatives put in place both nationally and in each county, considering the diverse topography and unique environmental and climate change needs of each county. Well, that is Honorable Veronica Maina, who will be presiding over this morning sitting. Allow me to hand you over to this live broadcast. Good morning.
Tuombe. Ewe Mwenyezi Mungu, twakusihi ututazame kwa neema nyingi na baraka. Sisi watumishi wako ambao umeridhika kutuita kwa nyadhifa za uongozi katika jamhuri hii yetu. Twakuomba utujalie kuyatenda na kufikiria mambo yote yatakayofikishwa mbele yetu kwa njia ya haki na uaminifu, ili kustawisha amani, ufanisi na heri ya nchi hii yetu na wale ambao haja zao umezikabidhi mikononi mwetu. Amen. Clerk, can you confirm the quorum? We have no quorum, so can you ring the bell for 10 minutes? Sergeant at arms.
Well, the directive or the direction that has been given by the Speaker, that is Honorable Veronica Maina, for the bell to be rung for 10 minutes. This is the quorum bell, and it is as provided for in the House Standing Order number 39 and 40, that are the commencement of a sitting of the Senate. If the quorum is not 15, that means if there are no 15 members seated inside the chambers, then that means the House does not have or has not achieved its required quorum for the business to commence, and that will necessitate the quorum bell to be on. That is Embu Senator Mundigi walking in. That bell is to pave way or give room for the members who may be within the precincts of Parliament but yet to make their way to the chambers, to just do that, to enable the House achieve its requisite quorum for the House to commence its business. But remember, this morning, as provided for in the House Standing Order number 51C, with regards to response to questions by Cabinet Secretaries, where a senator shall ask his or her question on the day it is scheduled in the order paper. And in today's order paper, we have seen a number of senators posing questions to the Prime Cabinet Secretary, who is also the Cabinet Secretary for Foreign Affairs and Diaspora, Honorable Musalia Mudavadi, who is expected to be inside the chambers to respond to these questions by the Honorable Senators. Standing Order 51C, paragraph 2 indicates that a senator may in writing nominate another senator to ask a question on his own or her behalf, where the senator shall be absent on the day on which the question is listed. However, where a senator is absent and has not nominated another senator to ask the question on his or her behalf, the question shall be dropped. Remember, with regards or pursuant to this standing order, Cabinet Secretary shall appear in person on the day on which the respective question is listed for response, and shall respond to the questions and may, with the permission of the Speaker, of course, make a statement on any other matter pertaining to their respective state department. However, these questions that will be posed by the senators, there will also be what is referred to as follow-up questions, and upon the issuance of a response or making the statement that is under paragraph 1, the Speaker may allow the senator who asked the question to raise a maximum of 2 supplementary questions that relate to that particular question, and also allow any other senator to ask a supplementary question, of course, with regards to the question that has or had been initially asked by the senator. If you're just joining us, is that this is the morning sitting of the Senate on this 10th day of July, a sitting where is committed to questions or responses to questions by cabinet secretaries, and these questions are questions by individual members to the cabinet secretaries to be able to respond to concerns as raised by the members with regards to issues affecting either county, inter-county, national or regional, and even international. The Honorable Senator for Kisumu County, Professor Tom Ojenda, also is set this morning to ask the Prime Cabinet Secretary and a Cabinet Secretary for Foreign Affairs or Foreign and Diaspora Affairs to outline the obligations of the government to Kenyans in the diaspora who face arrest. That is the Senator for Kakamega County, who is also the Majority Chief Whip, Honorable Boni Halwale. And back to the questions from the Senator for Kisumu County to the Prime Cabinet Secretary is that he will be seeking to find out from the Cabinet Secretary whether he could outline the obligations of the government to Kenyans in the diaspora who face arrest, detention, and deportation, and highlight any diplomatic agreements entered into with other countries on the applicable protocols. Also, what protocols the government has established for admitting deportees into the country, and could the Cabinet Secretary provide a list of Kenyans deported back to the country since the year 2010, stating reasons for each case where a deportee was refused admission. Remember, for the House to continue with its business, the House has to quorate to 15 members. And that bell that is underway, remember, the prayer has already been said and the chair taken. And if the House does not quorate to 15 members at the commencement of a sitting, the quorum bell will be on for 15 minutes. If at the lapse of the 10 minutes the quorum is not achieved, the Speaker may direct a further 10 minutes. Of course, this is to give room for the members to be able to make their way to the chambers to enable the House achieve that required quorum pursuant to the House Standing Order number 39 and 40. This is a House that abides by its rules, and therefore, if that quorum is not achieved at the lapse of the first 10 minutes and the second 10 minutes quorum bell, then the Speaker will adjourn the sitting until the next sitting. So all this business that is lined up for transaction this morning is subject to the House achieving that particular quorum. As you can see, a few members are in the chambers, and the Sergeant at Arms as well as the clerk are keeping in tabs with the number of members inside the chambers. Once that quorum is achieved, the business will continue. So what we will be seeing from now onwards until the end of the 10 minutes perhaps, or if the quorum is achieved, is that members will be making their way into the House. The Honorable Senator for Kirinyaga, Senator James Murango, will be seeking responses from the Cabinet Secretary for Environment, Climate Change and Forestry to explain the measures the ministry has put in place to mitigate the continued release of effluent and other pollutants from Embu County into River Rupingazi, River Thiba, and other rivers in Kirinyaga County, leading to damage and loss of marine biodiversity. Also, the Honorable Senator will want the Cabinet Secretary for Environment, Climate Change and Forestry to indicate what steps the ministry is taking to assess the extent of damage caused by chemicals discharged into the rivers, considering the huge and negative impact on people's health, as well as steps the ministry has taken to eradicate or control the cause of rising pollution levels in rivers within Kirinyaga County to guarantee the safety of water consumed by the residents. The Cabinet Secretary for Roads and Transport is also expected to appear before the Senate this morning. He will be responding to questions by the Honorable Senator for Siaya County, Dr. Oburu Oginga, as well as the Honorable Senator for Nyamira, Okongo Mogeni, as well as the Senator for Kisumu County, Professor Tom Ojienda. The Honorable Senator for Siaya County will be seeking we are waiting to see whether the House has achieved its quorum.
Clerk, can you confirm quorum? Can you please ring the bell for another 5 minutes, Sergeant at Arms?
Well, a further 5-minute quorum bell. But as you can see, the House is about to reach the 15-member number inside the chamber, the commencement of the sitting for the Senate this morning. So in just a few minutes, we will be able to achieve that number. Probably 2-3 members expected to walk in. And once that number is achieved, then the business will, without any further delay, continue or commence for that matter. On the questions that the senators will be seeking responses from the cabinet secretaries is that the Senator for Siaya, Dr. Oburu Oginga, will be asking. All right, the quorum has been achieved. Allow me to hand you over to this live broadcast brought to you by PBU in partnership with KBC. Good morning.
Order number 1, administration of oath. Order number 2, communication from the chair. Order number 3, messages. Order number 4, petitions. Order number 5, papers. Order number 6, notices of motion. Order number 7, questions and statements.
Honorable Senators, it's now question time, and we have several cabinet ministers, secretaries who are scheduled to appear this morning. The first one being the Prime Cabinet Secretary and Cabinet Secretary for Foreign and Diaspora Affairs. I'm made to understand that he's around and ready to take the floor. I'm just giving it 1 minute for him to walk into the chambers. Okay, Honorable Senators, the Prime Cabinet Secretary is now in the House. Prime Cabinet Secretary, Your Excellency Dr. Musalia Mudavadi, we want to take this opportunity to welcome you to the House. The senators had sent a few questions for you to answer, and you have question number 37 and question number 40. The two questions have emanated from Dr. Boni Halware and Professor Tom Ojenda, Senator Professor Tom Ojenda. And I believe you have done the responses, but I want to take this opportunity to welcome you. The Senate has been waiting to engage with you, and I want to now invite Senator Dr. Boni Halwale to come and give his question.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, could the Cabinet Secretary disclose the number and identities of all Kenyans currently working in the Gulf states? B, how many Kenyans have lost their lives while working in the Gulf states from the year 2022 to date? And C, Madam Chair, what support does the government provide to families of Kenyans who die while overseas? And could the Cabinet Secretary explain any actions being taken by the government to facilitate the repatriation of the body of MS Mildred Busolo Lisanza, deceased, from Saudi Arabia to Malinya village in Kakamega County? I thank you.
Prime Cabinet Secretary, it's your chance to answer to those questions.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I don't know whether I'm audible.
Yes, you are.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
But not too audible. I don't know why. The volume is quite low. Could you improve that? Technical team. I can hear him well, but I'm not sure whether the senators at the back can hear him. You may proceed.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. On the first question, I wish to...
Proceed, Honorable Cabinet Secretary.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I wish to state that there are thousands of Kenyans in the Gulf countries who are employed in various sectors.
I think hold a bit, Honorable Cabinet Secretary. Take your seat. Technical team, we have a problem. We don't know where that mic is coming from. It's disrupting the proceedings. Can you clear the sound system? It's disrupting the proceedings. You may proceed, Cabinet Secretary.
Thank you. Madam Speaker, I was saying that there are thousands of Kenyans in the Gulf countries, and I will tabulate the data that we have. We have in total over 400,000 Kenyans in the Gulf states, and I'll tabulate as follows. In Saudi Arabia, the records we have are there are 310,266 Kenyans. In Qatar, 66,025. United Arab Emirates, 23,000. Bahrain, 8,000. Oman, 5,392. Kuwait, 3,515. Iran, 200. Iraq, 150. The total record we have as of to date is 416,548. Madam Speaker, I wish to further state as follows. Kenyans in these territories exhibit high movement between various Gulf states. The numbers given therefore constitute periodic statistics derived from our missions in these countries, further corroborated through official sources of the host governments. It should be noted that not all Kenyans register with our missions abroad, despite being sensitized on the importance of such registrations. Hence, sometimes it is difficult to have very precise data. So, Madam Speaker, under the circumstances, it's not easy at this stage to be able to say that we can avail all the identities of these 416,000 individuals in the Gulf states. The second question was to do with how many Kenyans have lost their lives working in the Gulf states from 2002 to date. The records we have show that the total number of Kenyans who have lost their lives in the Gulf region is 316. The breakdown is as follows. Saudi Arabia, 166. Qatar, 58. United Arab Emirates, 51. Iraq, 25. Bahrain, 10. Kuwait, 6. Oman, 0. Iran, 0. The total, 316. Aspect C of the question, let me see if I'm going carefully. The issue is, what support does the government provide to families of Kenyans who die overseas? And could I provide details on Mildred? Madam Speaker, upon receiving a report on the death of a Kenyan abroad, the first step that our missions do is to notify the family of the demise of their loved one. The ministry does this by liaising with the employer, the foreign recruitment agent, if they're foreign-based, and the local recruitment agent based in Kenya to establish information about the deceased and next of kin. 2, the ministry also has a robust counseling department that offers psychological support to family members, including managing of the information, assessment, counseling, preparation for travel for a family representative or family member, and coordination with family members to receive the body of the deceased. The ministry also establishes the migration status of the deceased where possible, coordinates with the employer, the government agencies, diaspora groupings, other stakeholders and the family, while ensuring that the body of the deceased is well preserved ahead of repatriation back home. The ministry also follows up on the benefits and entitlements of the deceased person from their place of work in accordance with the applicable laws of the host country. Fifth, the mission facilitates obtaining of a post-mortem report to establish the cause of death and provides necessary documentation to facilitate the repatriation of the body back home. This includes issuing a no objection certification for the body to be transported to Kenya. The ministry also facilitates administrative procedures, including police investigations, if any, and a settlement of hospital and medical bills as appropriate. The ministry also coordinates with the deceased family on the arrival at the arrival port and date and facilitate to receiving of the body. Where the deceased is not employed or out of immigration status, the embassy liaises with the ministry to inform the family to enable them to make necessary arrangements, including sending a representative or a family member to facilitate repatriation of the body back home. Madam Speaker, there are limited resources available in terms of government support and facilitation for actual payment of bills of the deceased, as well as repatriation of mortal remains. However, in extreme cases and on a case-by-case basis, the ministry has invoked such support for extremely needy cases. For instance, in the case of Albania, there was medical evacuation, there was the death of an athlete in Mexico, and a student in Finland, where the ministry had to bear the costs. In many other cases, the ministry works and mobilizes the diaspora through associations to raise the necessary funds to facilitate repatriation. Madam Speaker, the final aspect that I wish to respond to is with regard to Madam Mildred Bosolo Licenza. We got information, she was reported to have died on 5th February 2024 inside Saudi Arabia. The mission established that at the time of the death, the deceased was employed on a valid contract. The mission, also through the recruitment agencies, established the contacts of the deceased's family and obtained a post-mortem report to establish cause of death and preparation of the body for repatriation home. The repatriation of the body took long since the post-mortem report indicated that the cause of death was suicide, and investigations were ongoing which affirmed the same. For this reason, the employer, who otherwise is supposed to assist with the cost of repatriation, declined to take responsibility for repatriating the body, citing that the death was not a natural occurrence. The ministry, through the embassy, escalated the matter to the labor authorities of Saudi Arabia to compel the employer to resolve the matter as required by the employment contract. I therefore wish to report that the employer eventually, after the pressure, took up the matter, and the body of Ms. Mildred Bosolo Licenza was repatriated to Kenya on Thursday, 9th May 2024. I submit.
Thank you, Cabinet Secretary. Senator Boni Halwane, you have an opportunity now to clarify any issues that you have through asking 2 questions. You could ask one now and one later, or you could ask both of them right away to the Cabinet Secretary.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I would want to ask 2 questions. One now, then give colleagues an opportunity to raise their issues. then the second one at the end. The first one, Madam Speaker, it is the policy of the government, at least going by the pronouncements of the President on many occasions, that we try and assist as many youth as possible to get employment opportunities outside the country. Madam Speaker, is it not shocking that despite that policy, the Prime Cabinet Secretary is not able to tell the country the identities of the Kenyans working outside the country? Madam Speaker, that a whopping 316 of them have died while out of the country. It shows, Madam Speaker, that this answer will not only bolster the employers who, in one way or the other, contribute to the death of these people, but also it will discourage parents from encourage. Yes, Speaker, I know where you're going.
Senator, you do not know where I'm going, Senator Boni, because I have not indicated.
Yes.
I want you to phrase your question. What you're giving now are views or debating the matter. You
I hear you.
phrase a clear, concise, precise question.
Yes, Madam
To the
Speaker, on a
Cabinet.
complex issue like this of death, I believe senators are allowed to build the question. I was building the question, and let me leave it there. Let me not build it any further.
We have 3 cabinet secretaries today coming to answer many questions of varied matters of national importance. I would beg that you make it precise and short and clear so that it's possible for the Prime Cabinet Secretary to respond.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, what I was building to is that could the Cabinet Secretary be compelled to table the list of all Kenyans working in these Gulf states so that the parents and relatives can be reassured that the government is on top of things as far as their lives are concerned?
Prime Cabinet Secretary, please respond.
It's gone again. Okay. Madam Speaker, I wish to state that we can, based on the records we have within the embassies, avail, because we are talking of about 400,000. In fact, to be precise, 416,058 individuals. We can work on having this brought to the Senate. I can only appeal on one issue, that as we give the identities, Madam Speaker, you'll also need to guide on aspects of whether we'll be breaching some aspects of the data identity issues by tabling all the 400,000. That's the only question. But we are prepared to be able to give this list.
Maybe to give a guide on that, tabling of that data will be subject to the Data Protection Act. So the data may be tabled, but subject in compliance with the existing laws within those parameters so that the individuals are equally protected as that evidence is being given. And then it will be subject to release or examination to the senator who is requesting for it, not for public display, without the consent of the individuals who are working in the Gulf. Thank you. Honorable Senators, you now have an opportunity to ask questions, but make sure you are not building the way Senator Boni Halwale was building to save on time so that we can accommodate many more. Senator Derito Kenywa.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The question that I wanted to ask is the same question that Bonnie asked. We needed specific, at least I'm happy that it tabulated the numbers. I wanted specific, what are our people, the 400 people, what are they doing in terms of profession? Are they teachers? Are they doctors? Are they house helps, Madam Speaker? And again, our embassies, when we travel outside, when we meet with our people, most of the people that we talk to, they don't seem that they are facilitated by our embassy. Our embassy, most of them, Madam Speaker, they complain that they are humiliated in our embassies. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Prime Cabinet Secretary.
Madam Speaker, the workers are varied. There are some that are highly skilled professionals. They range from highly skilled professionals, and we also have some that are engaged in the service sector. Some are laborers. So it's very broad. But as we said, we will, subject to the guidance that the Madam Speaker has given, we will be able to provide a background on this. The second aspect I would want to say is that we have our missions trained to give all the assistance that we can possibly give. And I can assure Kenyans that if indeed there are any incidents of what might be seen as a lack of courtesy, they are very limited. Most of the mission staff in our embassies have been very, very courteous to the Kenyan citizens abroad.
Thank you. Senator Osotsi Godfrey.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, allow me to thank Prime Cabinet Secretary, who is also from my county and a friend, for appearing before the Senate. I represent a county that has a problem, a major problem with what we are discussing now, Madam Speaker. And I think every year we have in excess of 12 people, cases which are reported to me. And on various occasions, Madam Speaker, I have brought questions and even engaged the Ministry of Foreign Affairs on the same. So what I would request the Prime Cabinet Secretary is if it is possible to give a breakdown of these figures per county so that we can understand the extent of the problem. Number two, in the process of dealing with this problem that is common in my county, there are occasions where we are told that some of these people travel to those countries through unregistered cartels of some recruitment agencies which are not licensed by the government. So there is every possibility that those who die and they were taken there by these recruitment agencies, possibly the government does not have their data. So what is the ministry doing about this? The issue of unregistered and unscrupulous recruitment agency who take advantage of the plight of these girls and boys to recruit them through illegal means, and then these people end up dying or harmed in those countries. What is the government doing about this matter?
Cabinet Secretary, respond to that.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I wish to state that definitely there were some challenges in the past, and we are trying to resolve them because we didn't have proper and accurate data. But I can assure the House and the nation that through the Department of Diaspora and also working with the Immigration Department, we are now establishing more accurate data of the Kenyans that are traveling to various countries, including the Gulf the Gulf states. Also on the websites of the State Department for Diaspora, we are able to indicate the licensed recruitment agencies, because in the past, we have had cases where the senator is right that unscrupulous people have taken advantage and landed our Kenyan people in very difficult situations. So we are trying to streamline this. And in between, let me also just notify the Senate that we are also improving on our negotiation on what you'd call the labor or employment agreements with various countries. And we are making them much better, much more refined, so that the safeguards can be provided for our Kenyans. And a classic example now is in Germany, where we are just about to conclude an agreement of a labor framework or employment framework, and we are refining even those that relate to the Gulf and other states. Equally, Madam Speaker, I want to mention to the House here, the Senate, that the points they are raising are valid and important, because one of the things we intend to do is to be able to have a sessional paper that will be brought to Parliament, and some of these issues we would like to draw from the knowledge and experience of Parliament, so that we can improve on how we engage with foreign countries on some of these issues. But we are making steps to change the situation.
Okay, thank you. Senator George Wungai Bogwa.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I would want the Cabinet Secretary to tell this House how far the operationalization of the Migrant Welfare Fund has reached. Thank you.
Cabinet Secretary.
Madam Speaker, that is work in progress, because the labor migration bill is supposed to be debated and cleared by Parliament. So that is work in progress, and then we shall be able to establish how the fund shall operate.
Senator Beatrice Akinyi Ogola.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I want to thank the Cabinet Secretary, the Prime Cabinet Secretary, for finding time to come for our questions, and probably to also guide fellow CSS that the questions we ask here are on behalf of the Kenyans that they're appointed to lead. My question to the Prime Cabinet Secretary is, Madam Speaker, why does it take the embassy sometimes a long time to respond to the distress calls of Kenyans, especially in the Gulf, taking into consideration, Madam Speaker, that the government is capable of tracing the details of Kenyans as they exit and as they enter those countries at the immigration points? Thank you.
Cabinet Secretary.
Madam Speaker, as I said, it's not as easy as it may appear sometimes, but our missions are making every effort, particularly in the Gulf, because sometimes our Kenyans don't then communicate. Once they have landed and they've gone to where they're going, they don't communicate, and we sometimes get to know only when they are in a state of distress. So these are some of the things we are hoping to overcome as we establish better data and better communication networks. But I want to assure the honorable member that we will not tire. We'll want to do the best we can to support our citizens wherever they are.
Senator Adan Dulo Fatuma.
Chair, let me welcome CS to this House. I think part of the issues I wanted to raise has been raised by Senator Osotsi, and CS has tried to assist. My problem is with the agencies, because most of them actually, they are not genuine. They are not also giving proper information. And I think as a ministry, you need to regulate them properly. Number two, Chair, if the credible agencies can be cascaded to the county level, so that those who are at the county level can be able to identify, because that particular area provides employment to our people. So if it can be cascaded to the county level so that they can know who are credible and they can apply through them or get employment, it will be better. I thank you.
Prime Cabinet Secretary.
Madam Speaker, first of all the agencies that are registered are available on the NAIR website. That is the National Employment Agency website. And this information is also shared with the NGAO. This is how we cascade it through the county commissioners all the way, so that this information is available at the district and county offices as well. But one thing that remains is that through this National Employment Agency, there are regulations, and we are trying to weed out all the entities that do not fit the bill, that are not fit for purpose. So this is an ongoing process, and we are also ready to receive any further ideas on how we can tighten the noose around the bad elements from this House and other Kenyans.
Thank you. Senator Mutinda Tabitha Morin.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Let me start appreciating the Prime Cabinet Secretary for the good job that we've been doing as far as digital literacy is concerned through ICDL. I take this opportunity to appreciate you. Also, just to inform you that I'm the owner of the Labor Migration Management Bill that you've just mentioned. It's my bill, and we can be able to work together to sort these issues. Two questions that I have. What MOUs currently do you have in your office with the Gulf countries where our people are working? And are there any rescue centers in these particular regions? Thank you, Madam Chair.
Honorable Cabinet Secretary.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. 19 MOUs are being negotiated as we speak. We are quite advanced with Qatar, United Arab Emirates, Saudi, and we have a few rescue centers. We have a rescue center in Saudi Arabia. And the other one, Madam Speaker, is that we are looking for resources. And this is a conversation we have had with the budget committees of Parliament to be able to obtain resources so that we can put up more rescue centers. That is one of the biggest challenges that we face. But once we have sufficient resources, we shall roll out a few rescue centers.
Thank you. Senator Mogeni Eric Okongo.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I also want to thank the Prime Cabinet Secretary for appearing before the Senate to respond to the questions posed to the Ministry. Madam Speaker, I want to write on the questions that was asked by Senator Alwali and ask a supplementary question. And I want to make a disclosure that I did raise this matter before the Prime Cabinet Secretary, so he's aware, and I thank him for having accepted to receive me when I went to raise this question. The case of Joshua Mankone Amenya, held up in Somaliland. Could the Prime Cabinet Secretary give us an update whether there has been any progress to secure the freedom of this Kenyan held in Somaliland? And two, just a clarification on the response by the CS. He says that Kenyans are attracted to work in the Gulf states because those countries provide high economic prospects for Kenyans. Could the CS kindly give us a breakdown on earnings for Kenyans who work in the construction industry, agricultural industry, and the domestic workers? How much do they earn in those countries? Thank you.
Prime Cabinet Secretary, can you respond to that?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I must state that on the issue of the level of earnings, that is data that would require a little more time to obtain. We may not get the precise, but we may try to get the range, the salary brackets, and then we can also avail that. On the issue of Joshua Makone Amenya, I wish to state that indeed it is true that the Honorable Senator did see me in the office with our other citizens, senior citizens like Chief Justice David Maraga and the family, the parents of Mr. Amenya and also his wife. And I wish to state that after the conversation we had, I did call the representatives of the Somaliland, the representative of Somaliland, and we held talks regarding the unfair treatment and incarceration of Mr. Amenya. And they then said that they would be going back to their headquarters, revert to the headquarters and come back with an updated position. Unfortunately, to this date, they have not come back with a response as to why they continue to hold this gentleman. I would also like to let the members know that this is Somaliland, not the federal government of the Republic of Somalia. So we have not stopped in pursuing the agenda. I continue to push it personally so that we can have a response and hopefully facilitate the release of Mr. Joshua Amenya, because the circumstances under which he is being held from where we sit are clearly unreasonable. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Cabinet Secretary. Majority Leader, Senator Aaron Cheriot.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I just have one question to the Prime Cabinet Secretary, and I appreciate the precise answers that he's giving to the issues that are being raised by senators, which is quite commendable. I see the Prime Cabinet Secretary is accompanied by, among others, the PS for Diaspora Affairs. Therefore, my question is in regard to the 19 bilateral labor agreements that he alluded to earlier, and I have heard the President speak about it in public forums on many occasions. Do we have a timeline of when we are likely to conclude on them, and what is a likely impact in terms of, one, job opportunities, numbers, and two, the cadres of scale, because there's misinformation outside there by cynics who imagine that the bilateral labor agreements are only for manual jobs, but not professional working opportunities for educated Kenyans. Therefore, if we can have a timeline, Madam Speaker, we'd really appreciate, because we've had about this conversation for quite a while. Can he give a commitment before this House that by such and such a time, we'll have concluded on these agreements? I know it's a cross-cutting issue between his ministry and that of Ministry of Labor, but that's where his cap of being Prime Cabinet Secretary comes in handy, because his duties overlap as well. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Prime Cabinet Secretary.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I wish to state that indeed these 19 agreements are work in progress, and they're at various stages because they're bilateral. So you are ending up negotiating with different countries. But we have some, for instance, Germany, we are likely to be able to conclude by September. And indeed, not too long ago, the German Parliament has now passed a bill basically affirming this policy, where they'll be able to take many migrants, and Kenya was trying to secure a slot to have close to 200,000 slots in different areas to be able to go and work in Germany. And I wish to state that we are not, these negotiations are not just about what you'd call laborers. We have a skills policy that is being worked on so that we can have even doctors, we can have other technicians, teachers, and other people who are qualified and skilled in different areas to be able to also benefit from this arrangement. In the case of the United Arab Emirates, for instance, we have more or less concluded a CEPA. This is a comprehensive economic partnership agreement, and part of the issues that we are alluding to are also now embedded in that agreement. So there is progress, but I would like to assure the members that each country has its own issues, and we try to navigate on a bilateral basis with those individual countries. But we're making good progress, and we will try to accelerate where possible.
Thank you. Senator Onyonka Richard Momwem.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. CS, I'm happy to see you, even though you're covered by the presidential, but I'm sure you're seeing me from where you are. First of all, I would like to say that I'm happy that you're dealing with this issue. I have previously, as you are aware, worked in the same position you're working now. And one thing that has shocked me, Madam Speaker, is that the things that we were talking 10 years ago, it looks like nothing actually did happen. So I would like to ask the Minister to tell me that out of all the bilateral labor agreements that you've signed with the countries that you've signed, the question I wanted to ask you is whether you are proactively, and if indeed, as you say, that these agreements are going to deliver some fruits, whether you're proactively engaging yourself in preparation to make it possible that when these people are able, our people are able to go and get these jobs, they could be handled and managed in settling in and what needs to be done, and whether the Minister is aware that the reason why the labor contracting agreements in our country and the reason why our people keep suffering out there once they go to those countries to work is because most of those agreements are actually hidden. Nobody knows what actually is written in there. Nobody understands what the terms and conditions are. So I'm hoping that when the minister has signed those agreements, he will enable the Labor Committee of the Senate to interrogate that agreement and make sure that we are able to understand what is in it and what we have gained, and if any, what the terms and conditions are. Madam Speaker, the last issue, which is a continuum of the same question I'm asking, is that I don't know whether the CS is aware that if you look at social media, somebody came and posted where they say that they are currently in the US, in Iowa, and out of the 400 people who are now Kenyans who are working in Iowa, this gentleman realized that all the 400 come from one given Kenyan community. The question I wanted to ask the minister is whether he's aware that his government is recruiting individuals according to their tribes and shipping them over to whichever country they are going to work, and whether he is trying to solve that problem given the fact that Kenyans are expecting equity and fairness when these opportunities come, particularly given that many of us in the Senate represent the county governments. Can the minister promise this House that when those positions come out and they're going to be distributed to Kenyans, particularly those ones that are targeting certain areas, that all our 47 counties are going to be included, and they will also get the small cake of whatever that the government is trying to bake? Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Prime Cabinet Secretary.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. First of all, I want to state that one of the things we want to pursue in government, and even in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, is an open government policy. By open government policy means that we do not intend to hide any information. We want to share information with Kenyans. They're entitled to it. And therefore, when we conclude any MOUs, they shall not be hidden. They shall be made available to the relevant committees of Parliament. And as I said, Madam Speaker, is that one of the things we are also planning to do, to bring before Parliament, is a sessional paper to have our members deliberate and guide appropriately on Kenya's foreign policy, foreign and diaspora policy. Because all along, this has been confined to the executive, documents are confined to the executive. We want, for the first time, a comprehensive discussion on Kenya's foreign policy. And some of these issues, I'm sure, we will benefit, that document will benefit immensely, or be enriched immensely from the wisdom of Parliament. The second thing that I want to emphasize is that these recruitments have been largely private sector driven. They have not been government driven, but the government will not entertain an ethnic driven arrangement when getting people opportunities outside the country. Madam Speaker, some issues are historical, and we all know them. For instance, and my brother, the senator, is very vast in this. He knows that if you went to Minnesota today in the United States, because of historical purposes, you're likely to find a certain inclination of Kenyans, because there were those who broke the ground in that area, and they tend to then invite more and more to come. If you went to LA and Atlanta, you'll also find a similar pattern. So there are some aspects that were there because the pioneering Kenyans who went there earlier laid ground for a number of other Kenyans to join them. So it is not a deliberate policy of government to pursue that. But thank you for highlighting that, so that as we reflect on these opportunities, we remain national in outlook. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Cabinet Secretary. Senator Ekomwa James Lomenen.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I would want to ask this question to the Prime Minister. Is the Prime Minister aware of the Ethiopian military who have infiltrated a place called Anona in Sololo sub-county in Marsabit?
Senator Lomenen, you know there is a cardinal principle. When you are asking for questions, there must be an offshoot of the primary, the principal question that brought the Cabinet Secretary here. Is your supplementary question in line with that policy?
Yes.
How?
In infiltration of Ethiopian military in Sololo sub-county in Marsabit.
I would guide you to phrase that question, give it to the Secretariat, and give an opportunity to the Prime Cabinet Secretary to come and substantively respond to such a crucial and important question. It does not emanate from the data he's dealing with, those Kenyans working in the Gulf. The original question, consult Senator Halwale. He will give you the primary question that was asked. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Senator Mwinyi Haji Mohamed Faki.
Asante Speaker kwa kunipa fursa hii. Kwanza nimpongeze waziri kwa taarifa aliyotoa. Mheshimiwa Speaker, niko na swali moja ambalo limegawanyika pande mbili. Kwanza, je, serikali inajua kwamba Mkenya kwa jina la Stephen Bertrand Munyako, passport number A353019, kwa sasa yuko Saudi Arabia na anatarajiwa kunyongwa ama kuuawa kupitia kwa hukumu ya kifo mnamo tarehe 26 mwezi huu wa 7, na ni jambo gani ambalo serikali ya Kenya inafanya kuhakikisha kwamba maisha ya Mkenya huyo ambaye alikuwa ameshtakiwa na makosa ya kuua bila kukusudia yameweza kuokolewa na vile vile pia kurudi Kenya kujiunga na familia yake ikiwa mama yake na pamoja na Wakenya wengine. Mheshimiwa Speaker, swala la pili ni kuhusiana na Mkenya mwingine kwa jina Nixon Daudi Mwango ambaye alihukumiwa na kwa sasa ameachiliwa, lakini bado yuko katika jela mjini Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, kwa makosa ambayo pia mahakama haikumpata na hatia, lakini anatarajiwa kurudi kurejeshwa nyumbani kwa sababu ya kumaliza kesi hiyo. Na mwisho, Mheshimiwa Speaker,
you should only ask 2 questions maximum.
Zinalingana, Mheshimiwa Speaker.
Let him respond to those 2, Senator Faki. I have 5 more senators
Thank
here.
you, thank you, Madam
and
Speaker.
We need to move to the next
Thank
question.
you, Madam Speaker.
Prime Cabinet Secretary, please respond to that.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Yes, we are aware of the case of Stephen Bertrand Munyako, who was incarcerated on a case of manslaughter in Riyadh, and I wish to state that a few weeks ago, I did write officially to the Foreign Minister of Saudi Arabia, intervening that this individual should not be executed. That execution was deferred. It did not take place. I also had the opportunity to meet the family of the mother of Stephen Bertrand Munyako, and we had a conversation. And the challenge that is there is that there is a proposal that is being mooted by the family of the person who died, that they be compensated to the tune of 150 million, equivalent of 150 million Kenya shillings. Madam Speaker, the family has raised about 10 million shillings, and they continue to try and raise more money, because this is what they call the blood money, some financial settlement for that. And clearly, it would be remiss of me not to notify the nation and Parliament is that there's no budgetary provision for the government to settle this kind of situation, whether in Saudi or any other country. But the ministry and the government is doing what it can to see if this matter can be resolved differently, and perhaps if the family that lost their individual can perhaps climb down from the high level of 150 million Kenya shillings so that this case can be resolved. So it is work in progress. It's a conversation that is ongoing. The second one, which you talked about, we are yet to obtain information, so I will not be able to respond immediately to that specific one. I will need a little more time to get more details on that one.
Thank you, Honorable Prime Cabinet Secretary. Yes, you can get more time to supply that answer because it's specific. Senator Agnes Kavindu Modhamu.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for giving me this opportunity. Let me first of all start by congratulating the Cabinet Secretary for making time to appear before the Senate from his very busy schedule. Mine is just a concern about our ladies, our girls who go to Saudi to work, because I've interacted with many of them who have managed to come back after much suffering, that their passports are taken by the bosses who they go to work for and kept there. Many of them, the agreement they have with the agents is that they are going to work in a particular house, and once they arrive there, they find that they are located to work in different homes, like 3 or 4. Some tell me that they work even in 6 homes. So they hardly have time to rest. There are also mistreatments of food. And once they escape and go to the rescue centers or to the police station, they find that they cannot be allowed to travel back home because 1, they have no funds to travel back home. 2, they have no traveling document because the document is kept by their bosses. What is the ministry doing about such issues to make sure that our people are safe and secure? And why can't also the agents who are not registered be arrested? Because majority of them are known. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Prime Cabinet Secretary, you'll answer this question, and I'll request the senators, 3 more senators wanted to ask questions, and he still has another question to tackle. We can consolidate your questions with the next question. You can still ask him in the next level. So you can answer this as the last question on this segment of questions.
Madam Speaker, I just want to say that NEA, the National Employment Agency, has actually eliminated 700, so far, 700 rogue agencies from the register who are associated with not handling the labor issues professionally. The other thing that I would say is that when these Kenyans get challenges, the embassy has always been available to provide emergency travel documents to assist them so that they can travel back to Kenya and move away from the hostile environment. And we continue to do so. And in fact, the Saudi Arabia center is perhaps the most active in issuing emergency travel documents or certificates for Kenyans in case their passports and documents have been held. The final point I would just like to say on this one is that the unfortunate side is that sometimes it's the fewer cases, bad cases, that tend to cloud the actual picture. But in reality, 90% of the workers, particularly the ladies, when they come to Kenya for a short break, they go back to the same venue. So the mistreatment, and we are not downplaying it, but we are trying to rein in so that that mistreatment can come to an end. And these are the areas that we want to refine as we negotiate our bilateral agreements.
Thank you. There is one more question from Senator Boni Halwale, so that we can close his section of questions. Make it short and precise.
Yes. Madam Speaker, the government of India, Philippines, and Indonesia have labor and social protection bilateral agreements with these Gulf states. And as a result of that, Madam Speaker, their workers who are there are better paid than Kenyans doing a similar piece of work. Could the Cabinet Secretary undertake to table in this House, in the shortest time possible, such bilateral agreement so as to protect our young people who are being paid 30,000 shillings as housemaids, when those ones from the other countries that I've spoken to get 3 times as much?
Prime Cabinet Secretary.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I can state 2 things. One, we will not hesitate whatsoever once the bilateral agreements have been signed. We, as I said, we want to pursue a policy of open government. We will be ready to share those with the Parliament, so we shall not have a challenge on that score. The second aspect, which is important, and I think I take it as an input from the Honourable Senator, is that our negotiating skills, even for the recruitment agencies and others, should be stepped up so that we can have more comparative and fairly more reasonable and comparative agreements being negotiated. So we should not negotiate ourselves short when we are negotiating for Kenyans. I take that positively. Thank you.
Thank you. That brings us to the end of this question. I now call upon the Senator for Kisumu County, Senator Professor Tom Ojienda, to take up and ask the question he had brought, question number 040.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Question number 040, addressed to the Prime Cabinet Secretary and Cabinet Secretary for Foreign and Diaspora Affairs, is in 4 parts, Madam Speaker. Could the Cabinet Secretary outline the obligations of the government to Kenyans in the diaspora who face arrest, detention, and deportation, and highlight any diplomatic agreements entered into with other countries on the applicable protocols? Part B, what protocols has the government of Kenya established for readmitting deportees into the country? And could the Cabinet Secretary provide a list of Kenyans deported back to the country since 2010, stating reasons for each case where a deportee was refused admission? Thirdly, how does the Ministry of Foreign and Diaspora Affairs handle complaints and reports of human rights violations against Kenyans in the diaspora before, in the course of, and after detention and deportation? And could the Cabinet Secretary disclose the number of Kenyans who have died in detention, and also provide details of all court cases initiated by Kenyans regarding such? Lastly, what measures has the government put in place to safeguard dependents and property left behind by deportees? And could the CS also explain the initiatives taken by government to facilitate the reintegration process for the deportees? Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Prime Cabinet Secretary.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The first aspect is I would like to inform the House that consular officers at our missions abroad normally visit Kenyans in distress in the host countries, such as those in hospitals, detention centers, or prisons. They offer assistance that includes issuance of emergency travel documents to Kenyans in the diaspora at home who may be in distress and want to voluntarily return. And this is in line with the 1963 Vienna Convention on Consular Relations that provides for general functions of a consulate, which includes protecting the interests of its nationals, both individuals and bodies corporate, within the limits permitted by international law. The consular functions listed in Article 5 include issuing passports and travel documents to nationals of the sending state and assistance in succession matters. Further, Madam Speaker, Article 36 of the Convention confers the following rights to a consular officer. Right to receive information regarding the arrest of nationals of sending states, the right to communicate with the arrested person and vice versa, that of the arrested national to communicate with the officials of the sending state, in this case our mission staff. There's also the right to visit the national of the sending state if in custody or detention to arrange for legal representation. And D, there's the right to respect the wish of the arrested national, including not to take any action expressly or on behalf of the national. However, these rights can only be exercised in conformity with the laws and regulations of the receiving state. I also wish to state that the Kenya Citizenship and Immigration Act, Cap 170 of the laws of Kenya, provides for issuance of emergency travel documents for Kenyans facing deportation and sets out conditions when someone can be denied entry. Madam Speaker, I would want to point out that so far, Kenya has entered into an agreement with South Africa regarding the return of nationals, refused entry and illegal entrance, which was signed on 23rd November 2022. Under this agreement, it is the responsibility of each country to verify the nationality of the deportees and, where necessary, grant them necessary travel documents. The agreement is, however, subject to the respective domestic laws and international instruments, including the 1969 OAU Convention governing specific problems of refugees in Africa. With regard to protocols readmitting deportees, the Citizenship and Immigration Act sets out the criteria or protocol for admission of such persons into the country. This includes the issuance of travel documents, verification of identity, confirmation of citizenship, right of entry and residence, among others. To this end, immigration officers along the points of entry and exit usually confirm that the person being returned is a Kenyan national before admitting him or her into the country. With regard to the second part of the question, requesting that I provide a list of Kenyans deported back to the country since 2010, stating reasons for each case where deportees were refused, I state as follows. The State Department of Immigration and Citizen Services has informed that the following number of Kenyans were returned on various grounds since the year 2022. We were not able to have information dating back to 2010. So we are able to present what we were able to get, and hopefully we can get the rest later. In 2022, there were 186 deportees. In 2023, there were 378. In 2024, there are 166. So a total of 730 deportees are on record since 2022 to date. Madam Speaker, we wish to state that, again, we will need guidance because as much as they are deportees, they have their rights. And to what extent can we disclose the reasons of each individual without breaching certain rights of these particular individuals? So maybe with the guidance of the chair, that is another area that one can seek guidance. But we have given the data of those who are deported. The third aspect is how does the Ministry of Foreign Affairs handle complaints and reports of human rights? In this regard, I wish to state that Kenya recognizes the sovereign right of any nation over their territory, and in managing their internal affairs, including admission and stay of persons in their territories, it is the duty of every Kenyan, therefore, to obey the laws of the receiving country. The protection of human rights is governed by the international human rights laws, which include the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the International Convention on Civil and Political Rights, and the International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights, and the International Convention against Torture and Inhuman, Cruel, or Degrading Punishment, among others. The exercise of powers over nationals of another state thus should be within the confines of international law. The ministry receives sufficient reason, when the ministry receives sufficient reason to believe that the rights of a Kenyan national could have been violated, the following are some of the measures we take. A consular officer undertakes a visit to the affected person to provide a report on the circumstances surrounding the matter. The ministry may also consider dispatching a diplomatic note to the concerned state's mission, requesting to be furnished with information regarding the circumstances surrounding such violations. Where the evidence is overwhelming and no response is received from the host state, the ministry may issue a demarche where the highest-ranking diplomatic representative, ambassador or high commissioner, or charge d'affaires is summoned by the Ministry of Foreign and Diaspora Affairs and issued with a protest note requesting action. Similar action is undertaken through the Kenya mission in the capital of the country in question, where our ambassador or high commissioner or charge d'affaires presents the displeasure of the Kenyan government on the same and delivers a protest note. The ministry may also consider dispatching a special envoy or other high-ranking official from the capital to appeal or intervene with the host state. Madam Speaker, Mr. Speaker, sorry, I didn't realize there was a change. Mr. Speaker, let me also point out that we are yet to get the accurate data on the Kenyans who have died in detention. So that figure at this point in time is not available, but we'll be ready to avail it once we have the accurate figure on that particular aspect. Finally, there is the issue of the responses to safeguard dependents' property left behind by the deportees. I wish to state as follows. The ministry so far has no safeguards in place with regards to the dependents and property left behind by the deportees, since such property is governed by the laws of the host country. However, there are other channels available for pursuit of such as a follow-up with the authorities through diplomatic channels if such a matter is brought to the ministry's attention. Equally, where necessary, our missions abroad may pursue the matter through umbrella diaspora associations for knowledge of such cases and what steps could have been taken within the confines of the laws of the host country. Unfortunately, for some Kenyans and in the advent of information and data protection, those who are arrested or are in conflict with the laws sometimes request prison authorities not to notify the embassy or any family members. Lastly, this is binding to the mission since it is in line with Article 36 of the Vienna Convention that requires consular services to refrain from taking action on behalf of the person in prison or detention or custody if such person expressly opposes such actions. The deportees, once verified to be Kenyan citizens, are released back into the country unconditionally. Thank you.
Thank you, Prime Cabinet Secretary. Senator Ojenda, one supplementary question, if you have, because we really don't have time. We're running out of time.
Speaker, I thought there was a agency sabotage, but it is a Wednesday. Mr. Speaker, I am satisfied with the responses by the Prime Cabinet Secretary, and as a student of international law and diplomacy, I will reach out to the CS to clarify some of the data that he has alluded to. I am satisfied and I have no follow-up question. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Senators, we really are running out of time, and with your indulgence, I will have to cut this session short because the other two cabinet secretaries are already here, they've arrived. So I will only allow two supplementary questions, one from Senator Mo Fire and the other from Senator Juma Issa Boy. And please be very brief and one question only. Please go straight to your question.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I want to revisit the concerns of my senior Senator Lwale on the issue of not having clear data of Kenyans abroad. I mean, should not arise because our immigration department that clear people to travel at the airport should have the data. Honorable Cabinet Secretary, do you collaborate with the sister ministry for that matter, the immigration department, so that maybe you can share those data?
Thank you, Senator. Senator Issa Juma Boy.
Asante sana Mheshimiwa Spika. Swali langu nataka kurudia tena kuhusu wafanyaji kazi ambao wanafanya kazi Arabuni, Saudia. Mheshimiwa Waziri, hapa mimi kama senator wa jimbo la kaunti ya Kwale, kuna shida kubwa sana katika kaunti yangu. Kwa sababu wafanyaji kazi ambao wanafanya kazi kule Saudia, kila baada ya miezi miwili, miezi mitatu, Mheshimiwa Waziri, utakuta kwamba kuna maiti yanakuja Kwale. I'm telling you. Juzi miezi miwili iliyopita kuna mwanamke mmoja kwa jina
Senator, yes, nilitoa agizo kwamba uende moja kwa moja kwa swali lako.
Ndio hilo naenda.
Uliza swali.
Unajua Mheshimiwa Spika,
hadithi mingi hatutaki, uliza swali.
Unajua saa nyingine mtoto mdogo ataka kuzungumza aseme baba anaanza kidogo ndo ataongea.
Uliza swali tafadhali Senator.
Asante
uliza swali.
Asante. Sasa Mheshimiwa Spika, kuna dada yetu mmoja kwa jina la Zuhura Swaleh Mabege. Zuhura Swaleh Mabege alikuwa akifanya kazi Saudia, aliuawa mwaka jana mwezi wa Disemba. Huyu dada kwao ni Magaoni, sub county ya Msambweni. Aliuliwa na mpaka saa hii familia yake haijapata kwa nini aliuliwa. Embassy yetu ya kule, Mheshimiwa Waziri, mimi nakemea sana, si kama kwa ubaya. Hii embassy yetu ambayo iko Saudia, tunataka iamke ifanye kazi. Hawa watu wanaofanya kazi kule wanakufa, wakiletwa hapa hakuna sababu wanaambiwa mtu amekufa kwa nini. Na embassy yetu iko kule kuwakilisha watu wetu. Faida ya kuwa na embassy kule ni nini? Mpaka sisi viongozi tupige kelele, tupige masimu, tuulize ndio maiti ziletwe. Mheshimiwa Waziri, nakemea sana embassy yetu. Na kama nasema urongo, waseneta wenzangu watasema kweli. Ni kweli si kweli watasema Mheshimiwa. Wanakufa na hatupati sababu kwa nini. Sasa hii huyo mama amefariki ni mwezi wa 4. Familia yake mpaka leo hajajua aliuliwa kwa namna gani. Maiti ililetwa mwezi wa 3 tukazika huko nyumbani. Na si moja Mheshimiwa Waziri, wengi sana wamekufa. Wengi sana. Si Kwale peke yake. Karibu Kenya nzima wanakufa Saudia na embassy haitoi sababu kwamba huyu mtu amekufa kwa lengo gani? Ameuliwa kwa nini? Wao ni kimya tu. Ukiwauliza embassy hakuna sababu yote, Mheshimiwa Waziri. Tunasema embassy iamke ifanye kazi. Mtu akifa walete maiti watuambie amekufa kwa sababu gani. Asante sana Mheshimiwa Waziri.
Asante, Senator. Cabinet Secretary, if you could please respond to the two questions briefly.
Thank you. I think let me say that we are not perfect, and the embassies may not have been perfect, but I believe I can be able to obtain information around Zuhura Swaleh and be able to share it even with the family, so that this matter can be put to rest. I also want to state that not all, I'm not talking about Zura anymore, that is separate, but some of the people who pass away in these countries, as we get the postmortem reports, not all of them are usually about murder, or some are actually normal aspects that come, cardiac arrest, some are afflicted by terminal diseases like cancer, and they're hit, and they end up dying in that place. So we can get a raft of this. But where, of course, it is foul play or it is suspected to be foul play, we always insist on investigations and also post-mortem reports to establish the nature. In Saudi Arabia, we have also now pushed to have a consulate in Jeddah, because not all cases can be handled from Riyadh. So our consulate in Jeddah will also help, in my view, in being able to get more efficiency in Saudi Arabia. On the issue of the data, I wish to reiterate that we did make a commitment that we are available, subject to guidance from the Speaker, because there are issues of data protection, and we want to safeguard that, because Kenyans are entitled to their privacy, and if they are traveling, it would be unfair for me to just table names and say so-and-so, the son of Mudavadi, the son of so-and-so has traveled, and you're making it public without recognizing that they are entitled to their privacy. So we need to be careful as to how we release this information.
Thank you very much, Prime Cabinet Secretary, for attending today's session, and thank you for the answers that you've given. At this point, I think we are going to give you leave, and maybe just to mention that we should continue these types of interaction. The questions that are the issues that are brought up to the Senate are usually issues from the public, and they usually demand for these answers. So we hope that we'll have more interaction with you in the future. Thank you very much. And we wish you all the best in your duty, sir. Honorable Senators, with us we have the Cabinet Secretary for Environment, Climate Change and Forestry. We will first of all welcome Cabinet Secretary. It's very nice to see you again here. We will go straight to the questions because of time. Question number 57, Senator Professor Tom Ojenda.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I shall ask question number 057, addressed to the Cabinet Secretary for Environment, Climate Change and Forestry, Madam Soipan Tuya. The question is in 4 parts. Part 1, could the Cabinet Secretary elaborate on the climate change initiatives put in place both nationally and in each county, considering the diverse topography and unique environmental and climate change needs of each county? B, what expertise was engaged and what criteria was applied in developing the national climate change initiatives and tailoring them to the specific needs of each county? Thirdly, could the Cabinet Secretary explain the measures put in place to enhance the capacity of each county government to implement the climate change initiatives in their respective counties, including the technical expertise of county governments to address environmental and climate change concerns, as well as the allocation of budgetary resources to each county within the designated timelines for the initiatives? And lastly, Mr. Speaker, sir, could the Cabinet Secretary provide progress reports on the implementation of the climate change initiatives in each county? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Cabinet Secretary, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this invitation and for the questions raised by the Honorable Senator for Kisumu County. Indeed, Mr. Speaker, on matters climate change, environment, there is a very intricate link between the functions of the national government and those of county governments. And the role of the Senate becomes very crucial in terms of oversighting the implementation of climate action. Mr. Speaker, in terms of background, climate change remains a major threat to our nation's economic, social, and environmental well-being. And the major challenge remains to be how we will overcome the current low levels of climate resilience and the adaptive capacity that continue to threaten the ability of our local communities and key sectors of the economy to withstand the climate shocks that we find ourselves in. The ministry is the government lead on all issues climate change and has, through the Climate Change Act of 2016, established the requisite governance structures to guide climate change action in the country. And I will be expounding on this a little later. Mr. Speaker, Kenya is signatory to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, the UNFCCC, and the Paris Agreement. And we have been very keen to adhere to this important multilateral process by tapping into the available opportunities for us to be able to influence the global climate change discourse through active engagement in various global fora that arise from this international obligation. Mr. Speaker, the Kenya Kwanza administration has been very intentional in profiling the country's climate action. And it is because the vagaries of the climate change debacle are borderless. And what Kenya does or does not do affects the global community and vice versa. And that's the reason why we have been very deliberate in our climate diplomacy. As a result of which, Mr. Speaker, Kenya is currently the chair of the African Group of Negotiators which gives the country an opportunity to shape the discussions on climate change in the continent, and thereafter influencing the same discourse at the global level through the conferences of parties, which happen every year. His Excellency, the President, is also the coordinator of the Committee of African Heads of State and Government on Climate Change, as well as after the hosting of the inaugural Africa Climate Summit last year in September, Kenya is currently the host of the Africa Climate Change Secretariat. And as I say, this really is intended to enhance our resource mobilization capacities, linking the country with technologies across the globe, as well as the climate financing challenges that we face, that we require the global networking. Mr. Speaker, coming to the specific question by Senator for Kisumu County, which is the focused on the initiatives we have put in, both at national and county level, on climate change needs, taking into account the climate change needs of every county. Mr. Speaker, notwithstanding the fact that the core mandate of the ministry is to provide policy and regulatory environment for adequate implementation of climate action in the country, the ministry has been engaged very vigorously in resource mobilization to address the climate change issues. I will focus on an example of a program called the Financing Locally Led Climate Action, FLOCA, which is a US $295 million program, which is focused on building climate change resilience at the local level. The program is targeting 45 counties, all the counties with the exclusion of Nairobi and Mombasa, and I'm going to explain the reason why. And this program is funded by the World Bank, the governments of Denmark, Germany, Sweden, and the Kingdom of the Netherlands. Another program is the strengthening forest management for improved biodiversity conservation and climate resilience in the South Rangelands of Kenya, a project funded by the Global Environment Fund, and a list of others. I'm just highlighting the fact that in response to the Senator's question, we have been involved in fundraising efforts, and we have a list of projects that have come through. And Honorable Speaker, any fundraising that we do lands in counties to address the climate change challenges. The ministry, again, through the Development Partner Group, under the Office of the Deputy President, has been championing the alignment of all development partner projects and programs to the government manifesto, as well as ensuring the focus on tangible projects on the ground for us to realize maximum impact. Regarding climate change initiatives that we have put in place, we have a robust legislative and institutional architecture to address climate change and its impacts at both levels of government. Mr. Speaker, sir, at the national level, some of the climate change policies and laws are listed in my presentation, ranging from the Constitution, the Climate Change Response Strategy of 2010, the National Climate Change Action Plan, which is very, very important, Mr. Speaker. The National Climate Change Action Plan, we had one running between 2023 and 2027, 2018, 2022, and we recently came up with the 2023-2027 strategy. And this is as per the Climate Change Act. And this basically is an iterative planning tool for mainstreaming climate actions across all sectors of the economy at both levels of government. It is also an implementing tool for both the nationally determined contributions and, Mr. Speaker, the nationally determined contributions are our national commitments under the UNFCCC on our commitments to reduce emissions and enhance resilience building. We also have the National Adaptation Plan, which runs 2015 to 2030, and the Climate Change Act, which I have spoken to, Mr. Speaker. And just to delve a bit into the Climate Change Act, which is the parent act on climate matters in the country, it provides for and supports mainstreaming of climate change actions into development planning, decision-making, and implementation. Also sets out the principles for climate change planning and implementation. And I wish to highlight some recent amendments that we made to the Climate Change Act, which is last year. And this was intended to provide for regulation of carbon markets and to provide policy direction prescribing carbon reduction with the aim to reduce emissions as per our international and local obligations. Kenya has the largest carbon market portfolio in East Africa, but the truth of the matter is, Mr. Speaker, in terms of tangible impact to the citizens of Kenya, this has been very minimal, and the import of the amendments to the Climate Change Act were actually intended to ensure high integrity carbon markets and a very clear mechanism of benefit sharing between the communities, project proponents, and governments, both national and county. In terms of the progress around the carbon markets space, last week, I think the week before, 18th of June, we have moved to designate the National Environment Management Authority, NEMA, as the DNA, which is charged with the responsibility of authorizing and approving participation in the carbon projects under the Paris Agreement. And the reason I delve on this, Mr. Speaker, is because a proper implementation of the carbon markets framework in this country has far-reaching impacts on improvement of the livelihoods of the communities, as well as ensuring that we have sufficient coping mechanisms against climate action. We have listed also the National Climate Change Framework Policy of 2018, the Climate Change Finance Policy of 2018, the National Biodiversity Strategy and Action Plan 2019, as some of the legislative frameworks which set the stage for climate action in the country. Mr. Speaker, it is important to note that the mandate of the ministry is on providing operational coordination on climate change, providing technical backstopping, and requisite climate change policy and legal environment. And in this regard, therefore, the core mandate of the ministry is to offer coordination of various sectors. And we have some sectors identified under the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, and those are the energy sector, agriculture sector, water, forestry, industry, transportation, all geared towards the mitigation effects or mitigation action against climate change, and our core mandate, therefore, is to do the coordination of all these entities. Mr. Speaker, we have made progress on enabling actions, and some of them I have already mentioned. Through the implementation of the 2 iterations of the National Climate Change Action Plan, there has been implementation of mitigation and adaptation initiatives across all sectors, some of which include the focus on increasing our tree cover. And this is with the recognition of the importance of prioritizing mitigation actions that have adaptation and sustainable development core benefits. Adoption of clean cooking, especially at the local level, to reduce over-reliance by our populations on biomass for domestic cooking and energy needs. And Mr. Speaker, I will be stating that the forestry sector is listed as the topmost cause of greenhouse gas emissions in the country, and thus the focus on restoration of our degraded landscapes, as well as focusing on alternatives to biomass energy to detract attention from the rudimentary focus on firewood for energy needs. And therefore, we are focusing on picking up on technologies across the globe that will give us sustainable options. Adoption of e-mobility, which is key in reducing emissions from burning of fossil fuels, and the government through the line ministry, Ministry of Transport, is in the process of finalizing an e-mobility policy to this regard. And I'm glad I saw a motion passed by a member of this House calling for an increased focus on e-mobility options and non-motorized transportation in the country, which is the way to go. The other focus is the increased percentage of electricity generation mix to reduce emissions from the energy sector. Our mix currently stands at 92%, and with the multi-agency coordination through my ministry, the focus is to push this mix to 100% by 2030. Implementation of the National Climate Smart Agriculture is another core focus under the Ministry of Agriculture for purposes of adaptation. Mr. Speaker, I have mentioned the Climate Change Act and the provision for the carbon market regulatory framework, the National Climate Change Resource Center, which we have recently operationalized, and this is a model information and knowledge management center domiciled at our meteorology department, and it is a national repository for climate change information and data, which is very, very much, it comes very handy at this time. The long-term low emissions development strategy, we prepared and launched it last year in 2023, which provides guidance to the country on attainment of low emission climate resilient development pathway in the long term. The ministry, through the support of development partners, including the Green Climate Fund, GCF, FLOCA, among others, facilitated the establishment and capacity building of climate change units across the counties and state departments in the country in line with the Climate Change Act of 2016. The ministry has also established climate change environment governance structures at the county level. These are county climate change committees under the respective county climate change acts and county environmental committees under the Environmental Management and Coordination Act. To sum up my response to the first question, Mr. Speaker, we have a law that came into effect in 2016, but little had gone into actualization or implementation, and that has been the focus of the ministry in the past few months. Going to the second question, which focuses on what expertise we have engaged, as well as what criteria we have applied in developing the national climate change initiatives and tailoring them to the specific needs of each county. Mr. Speaker, we are mandated to coordinate environmental and climate actions within the country, and having developed several national climate change initiatives, including policies, plans, and programs as required by law, we have also come up with an elaborate and inclusive process for the drafting and validation of national initiatives. And I'll state again, Mr. Speaker, that for the ministry and other key agencies at the national level and the county governments, we are linked at the hip when it comes to climate action implementation, and therefore the focus, as the question has been tailored, has been to make sure that all the initiatives, the national climate change action plans, the strategies are very inclusive at their development stage. And allow me, Mr. Speaker, to just give us a snapshot of the process that we undertook with the development of the National Climate Change Action Plan of 2023 to 2027, again to demonstrate the expertise we engaged and the criteria applied to ensure that these policies and strategies are tailored to meet the specific needs of counties. At the development of the National Climate Change Action Plan, we started off with a nomination process of a multidisciplinary and multi-institutional team, which was used. This multidisciplinary and multi-institutional approach was used to enable adequate scope and depth of input across all sectors. We undertook mapping of the technical skills and experiences required to identify experts from line ministries, departments and agencies, counties, private sector and civil society, and marginalized groups. Mr. Speaker, we work very closely with the Council of Governors in this regard. The development of the TORs for the steering committee to develop in terms of technical working groups to collect, analyze, and synthesize relevant data and information, and lead consultants to lead the various thematic teams and develop the action plan. We embarked on nomination of a steering committee, members and technical experts from the technical working groups by ministries, departments, Council of Governors, private sector, and all those players. Several working sessions of each technical working group were held to come up with a zero draft of the plan. We engaged in a very robust stakeholder engagement at various levels, at the county technical teams, national experts, special interest groups, a public validation process where the technical working group incorporated stakeholder input. And all these processes, Mr. Speaker, led to the successful launch of the National Climate Change Action Plan 2023-27 during the Africa Climate Summit last year. That just gives a snapshot of the critical need for the ministry to work with a cross-sector of stakeholders as we develop our plans. Question number 57, Mr. Speaker, focuses on for me to explain the measures put in place to enhance the capacity of each county government to implement the climate change initiatives in their respective counties, including technical expertise of the county governments to address environmental and climate change concerns, as well as the allocation of budgetary resources to each county within the designated timelines for these initiatives. Regarding the measures put in place to enhance capacity for each county, Mr. Speaker, noting the capacity building is a continuous and progressive process, we have carried out capacity building of county executive committee members, county officers, directors, and county climate change units in all the 47 counties on various climate-relevant issues. And this we have done through our climate change directorate within the ministry. We have also provided technical backstopping to counties on the development of county climate change acts, Mr. Speaker, and I am proud to say that at this point, all the counties are compliant in terms of coming up with their climate change acts. And what the ministry did was to develop a prototype that was then used by each county to come up with their climate change legislation. Development of county climate change action plans then followed, climate change policies, and participatory climate risk assessments. And at the same time, NEMA undertook development of county and environment action plans, mainstreamed into county integrated development plans. Mr. Speaker, you know that CIDPs are the core of the county development plans, and with these county environment action plans, which were deliberately weaved around the CIDPs, then we are in step or speaking in the same tone with the counties. Mr. Speaker, we have also provided an innovative programmatic support to counties. The ministry, in collaboration with the National Treasury and the COG, developed the Financing Locally Led Climate Action Program to provide mechanisms to finance community climate action initiatives for enhanced climate resilience. The program, as I have said, is funded through the World Bank and a conglomeration of other partners. And the design is a unique Kenyan innovation designed to showcase how global climate finance flows can be efficiently and effectively channeled to address grassroots climate response needs. Mr. Speaker, I know it's of interest to the senators to have some bit of detail on the FLOCA program. Under the FLOCA program's County Climate Resilience Investment Grant, in 2023-24 financial year, counties received a total of 10,507,827 Kenya shillings from the FLOCA donors. Out of this, 7.3 billion was from the FLOCA donors, and Kenya shillings 3.1 billion was from the counties fund, the development fund of counties.
Cabinet Secretary, sorry to interrupt. If you could please summarize the remaining answers, because of time. We don't want to keep here for too long.
Yes.
And we already have the response. Instead of going word for word, just summarize, so that because there are a lot of supplementary questions.
Well guided, Mr. Speaker. I'm happy if the senators have copies of my statement here, Mr. Speaker, because this is one program that is very important for purposes of collaboration between the Senate and the national government through my ministry to ensure that we attain maximum impact of the intended objective of this program, which is to fund climate action at the local level. Mr. Speaker, I have an annexure there which outlines how much money has gone to each county. And this is a very unique program which is based on results. And one of the conditions for the counties was that they had to put in 1.5% of their development budget to match that from the development partners. And Nairobi and Mombasa counties are excluded from this program for reasons that these two counties are big-time beneficiaries of other government, of other World Bank supported programs. Mr. Speaker, when it comes to the question, and as I conclude on this part of the FLOCA funding, the request to senators is to engage in the oversight role, as they do best, to ensure the funds are utilized prudently for the benefit of vulnerable communities. And the uniqueness of this program is that it is designed to run from the ward level. Question number 57, part D. The question focuses on progress reports on the implementation of the climate change initiatives in each county. Mr. Speaker, the Climate Change Act in sections 15 and 19 outlines duties of public entities and county governments with regards to climate action, and part of which is counties are required to integrate and mainstream climate change actions in their CIDPs. They are supposed to enact legislations. They are also required to report through county assemblies on progress of implementation of climate actions. They are to designate a county executive committee member to coordinate climate change affairs, as well as establish climate change units that is well staffed and resourced. Mr. Speaker, as we speak, until 2022, only 5 counties of Wajir, Mandera, Isiolo, Makueni, and Kitui had complied to the requirements of the Act. But through collaboration with the National Treasury, the Council of Governors, we have now supported all the counties, and I'm happy to say that we have full compliance. This is also true of the national level MDAs, where we have climate change units established across the board as per requirement of the law. Regarding progress reports on implementation of climate initiatives in each county, the counties are making significant progress in this regard, notwithstanding the many challenges. On policy and legislative measures, we have 45 counties that have already developed specific laws, like I had stated. We have 45 counties set up, which have set up county climate change funds and have put in 1.5% of their development budget in this regard. We have mainstreaming of climate change into CIDPs by 45 counties, Mr. Speaker, and the rest is outlined in the statement. On institutional measures, we have climate change units in every county as we speak. And Mr. Speaker, these are initiatives that have happened in the last slightly under 2 years because our focus has been operationalizing the law in this regard. Mr. Speaker, in financial year 23-24, we have seen significant prioritization of climate action at the county level in terms of resource allocation, which is very encouraging. And in conclusion, on the questions raised by Senator for Kisumu County, although much is already happening with the climate change crisis being manifested ever so harshly across the globe, with the cyclic events of drought, flooding, and this pendulum effect which is happening across the country, it is crucial that Parliament does prioritize adequate allocation of resources to both levels of government to address climate change issues, in order for us to build the necessary adaptive capacity for our communities. And this calls for aggressive resource mobilization, which I undertake for my ministry. And again, as I said, any funding that we mobilize at the national level lands in a county. Mr. Speaker, I beg to stop there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Cabinet Secretary. Senator, you have a supplementary question?
Yes, thank you, Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the questions that I asked was specifically intended to get the ministry to highlight contributions that come from the FLOCA fund specifically. I note, Mr. Speaker, sir, that my county, Kisumu County, got a total of 273,335,666, and that is commendable, because if we lose oversight on these funds, either through the PSC or through CIPIC, then these funds will go into waste. We'll never know where they end up. Mr. Speaker, one supplementary question. Could the Cabinet Secretary just tell us if there are any funds, if counties have earned any funds from carbon financing? If there's any supplementary list that CS as in Senate today, we could have it. If the CS could also perhaps even give this list at a later date so that we know, Mr. Speaker, how to oversight our counties. Thank you.
Cabinet Secretary.
Mr. Speaker, thank you for the supplementary question from the Senator for Kisumu County. Mr. Speaker, I highlighted that Kenya is touted as the highest trader in carbon credits in the region. Most of these transactions have been voluntary carbon trading transactions between private project proponents and communities at various levels and at different sectors. And there is a separation between these voluntary carbon projects, which are at a private level, and then we have the regulated carbon trading programs, which have not been in the radar of government. And that is the reason why we have focused very keenly on reviewing the law and putting in place a carbon market framework, Mr. Speaker. And one of the core components of this framework is a national registry that will process each and every single carbon market project in the country from different sectors. So we have one national registry, which is already underway in terms of operationalization after the gazettement of the designated national authority. And this national registry will be fed by sector-specific registries from energy, agriculture, and so many other sectors. The assurance I want to give this House and Kenyans in general, Mr. Speaker, we engage in a very rigorous public participation process, again to ensure that this space, which is shrouded with a lot of mystery, will now come to the fore with the full implementation of the law. And I wish to invite this House, members of this House, to pay keen attention to the legislation as it is, Mr. Speaker, because we are going to have, we already have a lot of interest expressed at different levels, even including a G2G arrangements around carbon trading plans. But there are so many other small projects going on in the country, and we are ready as a ministry now to net all these, put them under the national registry, then we can spotlight and ensure clear benefit sharing and transparency in terms of how these funds from the carbon markets are going to turn around the lives of Kenyans. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much, Cabinet Secretary. I hope, Senator, you're satisfied with that answer.
I am super satisfied.
Thank you. We will take other supplementary questions. I will start with Senator Esther Okinyuri. I hope your question is relevant to the main question that was asked by the Senator of Kisumu. And please go straight to your question, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm one of those who doesn't need to be reminded on being relevant to the primary question. So I would want to find out from the Cabinet Secretary the progress of the 15 billion tree planting exercise and the status of public forest cover in this country. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator, and thank you for being very brief. We'll take another question from this side. Senator Okongo, Eric.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I want to thank the CS for finding time to appear before the Senate to make clarification on some of the issues. Now, I want to raise a supplementary question on the usage of FLOCA money, the money that is used to financing locally led climate action. Waziri, you have mentioned to us that the government, through your ministry, has put in place governance structures to ensure that this money is utilized and used for the intended purposes. I interpret that to mean that you will assist the Senate to ensure that that money does not find its way to the pockets of those tasked with implementation. And I want to disclose that my county of Nyamira is one of the recipients of this money, and we received 55 million shillings. Now, Waziri, I want to raise a question that touches on governance, accountability, proper utilization of the FLOCA money. We had a project that was initiated called Raitigo Water Supply during the financial year 2015-2016. The county budgeted 17,301,915. The project was done. The money was paid to the contractor. I have details of the contractor who did the work. Auditor General raised issues on that project having been used to siphon money from the county. There being no value for money because the project was not completed and launched for the benefit of the people who reside in the Raitigo area. Now, in response to that audit query, the governor responded that he wants to use money from Climate Change Resilience Investment Fund to complete the project. Madam CS, how do you ensure that the money we are sending to counties is not used as a way of, as an avenue for governors stealing money that is meant for a very good purpose on climate change? Because I don't understand, Madam CS, how money that has been set aside for a project through county funds paid out to a contractor. Again, how do you use donor funds to repeat the same project? Can you address us on how you are following up on governance, the proper usage and utilization of money? And if you can also take the example I've given you for Nyamira. If you want the response to the governor, I have it. I can table it before the floor. That can assist you so that we ensure that this money does not go to the pockets of a few individuals. Somebody was saying that some governors set aside a percentage. If you send 55, for example, to Nyamira, some say that 20 million should go to their pockets and then 35 can do something. And we really want this money to be used for the benefit of the people of the counties where we reside. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Cabinet Secretary, maybe you can respond to those two questions, then we'll take the other questions.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I will start by responding to Senator Essie on the status of our 15 billion program, as well as the forest cover of the country. Mr. Speaker, I want to say that we have a constitutional mandate to ensure at least a 10% tree cover, not forest cover, tree cover for the country. And I'm happy to report that the baseline that we have as we implement the 15 billion is 12.3%. And as I said, and this is from the latest assessment of our forest cover and tree cover done in 2021. Mr. Speaker, I mentioned that the forestry sector is the highest emitter for the country. And if we are to deal with the climate change crisis, including the flooding, the cyclic droughts, I want to say and really persuade for all of us to be on the same page that this program of reforestation is very, very critical in terms of emissions reduction, but also dealing with the mitigation aspects of climate action. Mr. Speaker, the progress of the 15 billion tree growing program is very good, as I must say, Mr. Speaker. We have a very high and encouraging reception from Kenyans across the board towards this initiative. We have, as we stand, Mr. Speaker, the national government through the executive has taken a frontline approach to do adoption of sites for restoration across the country. And this is just intended to give this the necessary push for each one of us to join in, from individual Kenyans to the private sector, the county governments, to join efforts in this initiative to make sure that we enhance our tree cover from the current 12.23% to 30% in 2032. As a requirement of the law, Mr. Speaker, we are required to do periodic assessments after every 2 years of forest cover, and I can assure the country that going by the actions and the receptiveness of this program across the board, we are going to see very, very significant enhancement of our forest cover across the country. The last thing I will mention is that we are encouraging Kenyans to focus. If, Mr. Speaker, we had been focusing on very well-structured tree-growing programs in the country, we would be very far in terms of our forest cover. But what we have been doing over the years is planting trees and not paying much attention to the nurturing and protection of these trees to maturity. And that is why we have been deliberate in telling Kenyans, we are engaging in tree growing, not tree planting. If tree planting really counted, then we would not be planting trees anymore in this country. So even when there is no rain, the focus should be on how to protect the seedlings that we have been planting over the years. Mr. Speaker, moving to the question by the Honorable Omogeni on the usage of local funding, once again is just to really load the questions put forward by the Senator for Kisumu about FLOCA. It is a very, very critical fund, Mr. Speaker, and our intention as a ministry, and even in our discussions with the development partners, this is a model. It has not been tried anywhere before. Kenya is the first one to model this very devolved level climate action plan that is supposed to impact on lives from the very grassroots level. And we have had legislators and even executive members from other jurisdictions coming to benchmark with the FLOCA. So I would really want to urge this House, please let us guard the FLOCA funding against our hearts, because the development partners are willing and ready to scale up, but only if we record success. And going to the question raised by Senator Omogeni, in terms of the governance structure, and again, it is a very easy to monitor program. It is fashioned against program for performance, designed by the World Bank team, which there are clear steps and conditions that counties must meet in order to get the next level of funding. It is in my interest, and I'm sure for the senators, that all our counties succeed in this. One of the requirements of the P4R system is that counties must come up with special purpose accounts. Actually, if they don't come up with special purpose accounts, it becomes an audit query, and they cannot be eligible for more funding. So those are things that we need to look out as senators. That is what you need to look out in your oversight role. We have climate change planning committees at the county level, and we have ward climate change committees, again at the ward level. And at the ministerial level, my ministry is one of the implementing agencies, and together with the Council of Governors and the National Treasury, we are part of the project implementation unit, and it has clear guidelines on the parameters that the counties have to meet in order to get further support. In terms of the questions raised by the Auditor General on the Raitiko water plant or project, I don't have the facts of the particular case, but it is, again, my plea that we spotlight the FLOCA program to make sure that it is working and that the money will not be misused, because it will prevent us from getting more support from the development partners. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Cabinet Secretary. Maybe I would direct Senator Eric Omogeni to table the query by the Auditor General so that it can be furnished to the ministry and they will be able to look into it.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, sir, I then wish to table a letter dated the 15th of May, 2024, signed by His Excellency Governor Amos Kimomi Nyaribo, and I'll direct the CS to look at page 34 of that document, the project Raitigo Water Supply, initiated 2015-2016. The second column will show you the money that was budgeted and paid, 17,301,915. The fourth column, as a response from the governor, where he says that he's going to use money from Climate Change Resilience Investment Program, grant funds, to complete that project. So it will be double budgeting, budgeted at the county level, money set aside, money paid to a contractor, and again, he's saying in 2024-2025, he's going to take money from the donor funds to put it in the same project. So, Mr. Speaker, sir, I table the document.
Thank you, Senator. We'll take the next two questions from Senator George Mbugua and Senator Alexander Mundingi. Give him the mic, please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Under the Forest Conservation and Management Act, community forest associations are granted permission to participate in forest conservation, including harvesting and grazing. Mr. Speaker, recently the ministry made a pronouncement that they are banning grazing of animals in the forest, and it was not clear whether it is all forest. Can the Cabinet Secretary tell the country through this House what is the correct position so that we can know what is happening in our counties? Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Mundingi.
Asante Bwana Spika. Asante kwa waziri na ile kazi unafanya kubadilisha katika nchi yetu ya Kenya. Swali langu Bwana Waziri, vijana wengi wa Embu County watapanda miti ama walianza kupanda miti, na wakiendelea kupanda miti kabisa, watafaidika namna gani na mambo ya carbon credit? Kwa sababu wakati ile mwingine walipanda miti, na wakati mlikuwa nua miti, Embu County tuko na wodi 20 kule Masinani, na tuko na sub county 4 katika Embu County. Kilio yao miti haikununuliwa. Kwa hiyo sasa, Madam Speaker, watu watafaidika namna gani? Vijana wetu ndio waweze kujisaidia kwa maisha wakitafuta kazi ile nyingine inafaa. Pia hata tunajua hata hii inafaa. Ya pili, ni asante kwa sababu Embu County ilipatiwa milioni 90. Maramishi nyingi ambaye mimi nisikia governor akisema ni kuwa pesa nyingi ni sawa, inaonekana kama mingi, lakini sinda ni kuwa nyingi zimewekwa mambo ya kufunza watu mambo mingi. Kwa hiyo tunaona Bwana Waziri, ni heri mambo ya mafunzo ingekuwa pesa kidogo na hiyo ingine iweze kuenda kupanda miti. Asante Bwana Speaker.
Asante sana, Senator. Cabinet Secretary, maybe you can respond to those two questions.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just to sum up the question by Senator Omogeni, please focus on the special purpose accounts of the FLOCA, and to make sure we have a thread of how the money is being used, then you can do proper oversight. And I will definitely look at the letter that you have cited and tabled before the House. From Senator Mbugua on the Forest Conservation and Management Act, Mr. Speaker, we have within the law participatory forest management processes. I want to say that without the support and partnership of communities, we cannot succeed with our tree planting, we cannot succeed with our forest management. And the intended purpose for participatory forest management procedures is to have communities at the core. The forest adjacent communities at the core of forest management. On the issue of grazing, we have, under the Forest Management Act, we have the formation of community forest associations. These are legal entities, Mr. Speaker. Under the Community Forest Association, there is laid out a framework of collaboration between the forest associations with the Kenya Forest Service officers to actualize the participatory forest management plans, in the sense that we have certain user rights within the forest. Grazing is one of them, but they are practiced within certain parameters and certain regulations. For example, Mr. Speaker, we cannot say that we can have freelance grazing in our forests, because then what happens to the restoration efforts that we are engaging in? We plant trees, and then cows and goats come in and eat up the seedlings. We'll be doing a zero-sum game. The effect of the participatory forest management plans is to make sure that we have zoning of our protected areas. We have designated spaces where grazing can happen. We have areas where grazing cannot happen. That requires regulation. That requires cooperation and close collaboration between the communities and the Kenya Forest Service through forest management agreements. Mr. Speaker, the statement that the Senator says that we made as the ministry, I am just coming back to tell the country that we have user rights within our forests, but they are matched with responsibilities of conservation. And for my statement was very clear. I did a written statement and circulated across the country. And basically, what I'm saying is that we have a law, we have a way of engaging between the Kenya Forest Service and the communities. We just need to enforce that in a very collaborative fashion. The problem, and I'm not afraid to say, is that there has not been enforcement. It has been a free-for-all. So when we come in to call for enforcement, there is a bit of discomfort. But rest assured, Honorable Senator and the entire House, that we are not phasing out user rights. We are just saying they have to be measured against the responsibilities for conservation. And the law is very clear about that. And I want to promise that public participation is what we are going to carry out across the country, so that we don't have misconstruction of what the ministry is doing around this. Communities are our key partners. Mr. Speaker, coming to the Embu Senator, the issue of carbon credit, I have spelled it out. I would wish the Senator to look at the law as it is right now, how we are designing. Actually, the community benefit sharing framework within our new carbon markets law is very clear in terms of what the communities should get against various classifications of projects. Some of them are land-based, non-land-based, community lands, and private lands. Mr. Speaker, I take cognizance of the issue raised by the Senator to the effect that young people are planting trees. Some of them have come up to develop nurseries across the country because of our 15 billion tree strategy. Mr. Speaker, we had a very good plan to set up a green army across the country, which was really going to focus on these young people, where we would source the seedlings from them for the tree planting initiatives, but also use them in the protection and maintenance of the seedlings. But because of the fiscal situation we find ourselves in, we are yet to implement that. But with the current tree planting activities happening at the executive level, where CSs are allocated various ecosystems across the country, we are very clear that we mobilize around the local communities in whatever site a CS is allocated to, in terms of sourcing of seedlings from our young people and young women, but also engaging them in the contractual activities that come with it. Finally, Senator Ovembu has also raised a very pertinent issue with regard to our development partner funding. Mr. Speaker, the sad truth is that we have billions of monies that come from our development partners, but most of it goes to intangibles. Training after training, seminars, but as I said, really to attract attention of the senators to the FLOCA funding. We are very keen, and I have been making trips across the country, meeting governors, just encouraging that we come up with visible models, tangible models of what the FLOCA program is doing. Only then shall we succeed. If we are saying we are doing a water project, then we see an end-to-end plan on how FLOCA started this and finished. That's the only thing that will convince our development partners to scale up these programs. We are also encouraging our governors, because of our need to restore our ecosystems. We are encouraging them not to spread too thin. For this initial rollout of FLOCA, just focus on 1 or 2 ecosystems. If it's a water project, yes, pick a wetland, fence that wetland, plant trees around that wetland, and let us see water flowing out of the FLOCA money, because it is a lot of money if well utilized. So, Mr. Speaker, once again, as an implementing ministry, we are keen to make sure that these development funds go towards tangible, visible projects. And the monitoring aspect of FLOCA, Mr. Speaker, is one I've been very invested in, and with the support of this House, then we can make sure that we will have replicable models that will help us in our environmental conservation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Cabinet Secretary. We shall proceed to the next question. I see that James Murango is not here, so I will direct that question is dropped. And Honorable Senators, it's very unfortunate that as Senators, we put a question in place. The CS prepares the response, sends a written response, attends the Senate to respond to that question, and then the Senator is not present. It's very unfortunate, and I apologize to the Cabinet Secretary for that, but I have to drop this question. And we also have the provision on our standing orders that you can nominate somebody to ask on behalf of you if you're not available. So, Cabinet Secretary, my apologies for that, but I do thank you for your thorough answers to the questions that were asked today. And I would want to also encourage you not to lose heart on this one case where the Senator was not here to ask the question. But we need this kind of interactions, because the issues that are raised here by the Senators are issues brought to us by the public. And they find this opportunity for them to get the answers that to get the answers that they've asked. So, Cabinet Secretary, mine is to say thank you very much for attending, and to wish you all the best in your duties and the work that you have at the ministry. Thank you very much, and we will give you leave. Honorable Senators, we have the Cabinet Secretary for Roads and Transport. Cabinet Secretary, welcome back to the Senate again. Thank you very much for appearing. We will go straight, because of time, we will go straight to the questions. Question number 45 by Senator Oburu Oginga will be asked by Senator Ogola. Senator Ogola, please proceed and ask the question on behalf of Oburu.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I ask question number 045 by the Senator for Siaya County, Senator Dr. Oburu Oginga, MGH, MP. And the first question, Honorable Speaker, is, could the Cabinet Secretary explain the delay in the completion of the Wangarot-Kamito Road C842 construction project in Siaya County, which was launched in 2016, and provide a timeline for completion of the project, Honorable Speaker? The expected completion period was supposed to be 2016 to 2021. And two, Honorable Speaker, what are the reasons for the delay in the resumption of construction of Awelo-Leunda Road C843 in the county? And could the Cabinet Secretary provide a timeline for the resumption and completion of the works? And lastly, the third question, Honorable Speaker, is, could the Cabinet Secretary also provide a status update on the upgrading to bitumen standard and performance-based maintenance on Gotnanga Bar Obe Road C948 and indicate the projected date of completion? Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Senator. Cabinet Secretary, you can respond to the question.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity to come and respond to the questions. Always, again, let me repeat that it is my greatest pleasure to come back to this very august house. Mr. Speaker, because all the questions relate to pending roads, allow me by way of introduction just to say something in 2 minutes. One is that the situation has not changed insofar as development of our roads in the country from the time I was here. And it's important for the nation to understand that, let me repeat this here, that when we came to office in October 2022, and from when this government was elected in August 2022, I inherited a road portfolio on these roads that have been mentioned for development that had about 150 billion pending bills. All this amount, Mr. Speaker, was in regard to roads that have been pending for even up to 10 years. The last time I was here, I gave examples of some of the roads that have been pending for many years, including in Tharaka-Nithi, in Chakarika, Marimanti, from the last 10 years in 2014 when we went to launch that road. The people of Kenya will appreciate that that 150 billion required a one-off payment of the 150 billion, so that then from the time we came to office, we should then have commenced an accumulation of that amount from there moving forward. Unfortunately, in the first year, we were given a budget of about 53 billion. Of that 53 billion, Mr. Speaker, about 33 or 34 about billion was dispersed, and we paid the contractors in the year 2022-2023. When we paid some of these contractors, because it's distributed, as you know, Parliament budgets road by road, it's distributed a little amount of money across the roads. Some of the contractors were able to go on site. Then in this financial year, which has just ended, 2023-2024, the budget provision initially was 73 billion. Then supplementary budgets came in, cut that amount up to 51 billion. By the end of that financial year, on 30th of June 2024, which is a few weeks ago, the ministry only had received 25 billion, a half of the disbursements of the budgetary allocation. What does that mean? For the 2 years I've been in office, in terms of budget allocation and disbursement, the actual money that came to the ministry to chase the road portfolio of 150 billion then was only about 50 billion. And Mr. Speaker, when the 50 billion was paid, of course the contractors incurred another pending bill. That moved it to, again, 165 billion. So as we sit here, we have a pending bill of 165 billion for all the road contracts across the country. That explains why most of the questions that I'm going to now read, the answer as supplied to this House, the answers are majorly we will complete when funding is provided. We have gone to a new financial year with another budget of another 50 billion, Mr. Speaker, to chase another 165, and therefore we are not even sure whether there will be a disbursement that is commensurate to the resources we want by the end of this financial year. It therefore means, from a ministry perspective, unless from the Treasury and Parliament through budget, we have a drastic decision-making for a one-off payment of the contractors of the 165 billion, we will be lying to the nation, and I will continue being that minister being accused if we lie to the nation that we are going to complete these roads in time in the absence of a drastic change in the budgeting process. It is even, the situation is made worse because, Mr. Speaker, of the misfortune of the failure of the finance bill. That means we stagnate around here because government to be able to plug in the 49 billion, that is a gap, and to look for other resources to do this becomes a big challenge. The answers, Mr. Speaker, now when I read will move a bit faster because all the answers, most of the answers to the questions asked here are related to non-existence of budgetary allocation for the roads to be done. It is the state of the nation, it's the state of the ministry, it's the state of our roads. And it's important that for the last 2 years, why this government has been accused of miscommunication is, Mr. Speaker, because we have tried to behave like an African father who does not want to tell his children the exact state of his pocket in the hope that in the fullness of time, you will get something and you will satisfy your children. Unfortunately, the impatience of your children can easily eat you because you've been trying to hide the truth of what it is. I have decided, Mr. Speaker, that we lay it bare so that the people of Kenya know the state of their infrastructure, the state of their accounts, their budgets, so that then they will know whether they will be ready to make sacrifices in other sectors to complete the roads. And Mr. Speaker, the last statement I was going to make on this issue is that this is a systemic, historic problem because some of you who are sitting now here, who are in National Assembly, you kept, for example, in our Jubilee administration, which I gladly also were part of it, but I sat in this House. You kept doing the things you did in National Assembly by increasing the number of roads and approving a budget for roads without a clear plan of how will these roads be completed before you start a new one. That is why this administration also, when we came to office, we made it clear to the country that we are not going to start new projects until we complete the projects that are in place, because this disease was going to be carried forward continuously, year in, year out, and we were living a lie. And that's why we must confront the reality on the ground. Now, therefore, Mr. Speaker, I will go straight to respond to the question number 45. Mr. Speaker, the delay in the completion of Wang-Arod-Kamito Road and the Maseno-Kombewa-Kalandini Road D245 and Maseno Town Roads RWC 119 projects were caused by the contractor's withdrawal from the site due to the severe financial distress from the accumulation of the pending bills. The current pending bill for this project is Kenya shillings 203 million shillings, 476,681.90 cents, and the allocated budget for the last financial year, which has just ended, has been exhausted with a payment of only 56 million shillings, 370,000. The budget for the project for this coming financial year, Mr. Speaker, is 70 million. You can see even the budget for this financial year coming is 70 million, still chasing the balance of the 203 million, which is the pending bill. Meanwhile, the ministry is engaging the contractor to prioritize maintenance work to ensure motorability at affected sections ahead of the full resumption of the works. Mr. Speaker, number 2, the delay in the completion of Bondo, Uyawi, Kibanga, Liunda Beach Road, which is C843 road project, is due to the contractor's withdrawal from the site, citing delays in payment of interim payment certificates for the certified works. Mr. Speaker, the Ministry through KERA has engaged the contractor to resume works following partial payment on the previously owed amounts. The contractor has committed to mobilize and resume operations to ensure the project's completion as modalities are put in place to clear the outstanding amount of Kenya shillings 33,777,596.69. In the last financial year, the contractor was paid 61,171,999 out of the allocated 70,800,000. And the ministry aims to clear the balance in the next tranche of disbursement from the National Treasury. The upgrading to bitumen standards and performance-based maintenance of the Gotnanga, Jera, Bar, Ober, D1853 road project is currently at 20% progress, with 2.35 kilometers of tarmac completed out of the contracted 12 kilometers. The project's delay was previously caused by inadequate budgetary allocation, leading to payment delays and the contractor's withdrawal from the site. The contractor has since resumed full operations following the payment of all the pending bills in November 2023. The project is anticipated to be completed in the financial year 2024-2025, this financial year, subject to the appraisal of the contractor's application for an extension of time. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much, Cabinet Secretary. We'll go straight to the next question, number 50 by Senator Mugeni Eric.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to ask question 050. One, CS, why are there no essential road safety features, including proper markings, signage, rumble strips, and speed bumps on the Metamayua, Mecheo, Chebingombe, Nyansiongo Road? 2, could the CS also explain the inordinate delay in completing the construction of the Nyagaita Bridge along the Metamayua-Mosovet-Kebirigo Road, which was commissioned 10 years ago? 3, could the CS explain what steps has the ministry taken to ensure the timely resolution of the aforementioned concerns by the people of the great county of Nyamira? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Cabinet Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg to respond as follows. Outstanding works remain on the project for the upgrading to bitumen standards and performance-based routine maintenance of the Kijauri, Nyansiongo, Raitigo, Metamayua Road. The contractor, China Far East Construction Group Limited, withdrew from the site due to severe financial distress from the significant amount owed by him, amounting to 856,981,424. I am cognizant of the fact that the outstanding works are critical for safe usage of the road and constitute installation of tertiary road features such as the road furniture, speed bumps, road markings, and signage. It is noteworthy that during road construction, the sequence of activities is such that the works start with the earthworks, followed by pavement works, and the tertiary features are attended to last. Unfortunately, the contractor in this case withdrew from before carrying out the tertiary works as a result of the aforementioned financial distress. Mr. Speaker, this has become also a problem for us in the road safety site. The questions Kenya are asking, and then again, using this answer, it's across the country. Because all the roads which are pending are partially done, then, and the sequencing of how to construct these roads requires that you finish first before you start road furniture and markings. Then the people of Kenya are suffering because, there are no bumps in the areas they are asking, there are no markings, because the contractor is not on site and because the work has not been finished. So it's a double jeopardy when it comes to the question of you don't have the road completed and you don't have the safety on the road because of the markings. Mr. Speaker, the Metamayua, Mosobeti, Kebiringo Road, B5 was constructed through the stage construction approach, and the Nyagaita Bridge was not part of the project scope due to funding limitations at the time. The ministry acknowledges that the bridge requires extension to accommodate increased traffic volumes following the completion of the road projects. As an interim measure to improve safety, guardrails were installed on the bridge, along with the construction of rumble strips and speed bumps at the approaches to calm traffic accessing the bridge. Number 3, regarding the Kijauri, Nyasiongo, Raitigo, Metemayo Road, the contractor is under instructions to carry out the necessary works as detailed in the substantial completion inspection report. This will be subjected to final completion inspection before the contractor is discharged from the project. However, the contractor has not attended to the outstanding works to date and has since withdrawn from the site due to the aforementioned financial distress. The ministry is pursuing funding options in consultation with the National Treasury to find viable financing solutions to pay a significant portion of the outstanding payment for this and other similar stalled projects to facilitate the completion of outstanding works. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, CS, for that response. I believe, Honorable Omogeni, you've got a supplementary question to that, which, well, I grant you the opportunity to proceed.
Yes, thank you, Bwana CS, for your response. But Bwana CS, through Mr. Speaker, you note that in your response you have said the outstanding works are critical for the safe usage of that particular road. And I want to bring to your attention, CS, that already we have lost about close to 10 people along that stretch of that road. So this is a matter that is very, very critical if we are to attain the safe usage of that road by the residents of Nyamira. Is there any urgent measures you can put in place to ensure that these remaining works are done during this financial year, going by the government policy of completing projects that are already ongoing before we deal with the new ones, noting that there is not even one single bus stop along that road. There are no bumps anywhere in the whole of that stretch, Mr. Bwana CS. And to the Nyagaita Bridge, you note that that is a high volume road. The bridge I'm mentioning is really a makeshift. It's a makeshift. That's the road we use to transport our tea, a key economic activity in the county of Nyamira. Can I get an assurance from the CS that that can be done within this financial year? That has been pending for more than 10 years. The road was launched, commissioned, but that bridge is a big hindrance on the transportation of tea. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Senior Counsel. Waziri?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think if we can, at least I did the early introduction about the general status of the funding across the country. The thing I would suggest is that maybe we can plan for safety activities just within the availability budget. So see if we can do the bumps and the markings. And even if it is just signage to say approach slowly, there is along and the problem with the line, I have heard you, sorry, Mr. Speaker, I should not be, but the reason why you can't put the marking is perhaps unless they have finished to the required layer. If you put the marking, you will have to remove again and do it. But I have also, based on the experience of this problem across the country, I have been asking the engineers whether we can reverse the decision on how roads are completed, such that every milestone is complete. That means if you have a 10 kilometers and a milestone is 1 kilometer at a given period, you do the 1 kilometer after markings, then 1 kilometer after marking. So that is, from a policy perspective, we think we should do that, considering now we have a long way to go to complete the remaining kilometers of roads based on the budgetary allocation. So we will look at that widely, but in the meantime, we will try to do some signage and perhaps bumps. On part of the bridge, let me see. There's something we're trying to do, Mr. Speaker. The reason why also maintenance money is becoming difficult to get ways of apportioning money from the road maintenance levy is because we have reached our limit. At the moment, our road network has increased by 61,000 kilometers from 2016. The road maintenance levy fund that we have now, their value at the moment has depreciated because the power of the shilling at that point in time in 2016 is not the same power of the shilling today, yet we still collect 18 shillings per litre. We had a very good public participation about increasing the road maintenance levy by 7 shillings so that at least we raise some money to do this maintenance, which is another problem across the country. Roads, for example, like Isibania to Kisii, the period for construction by the contractor to construct and maintain is now over. So it needs to be handed over to Kenya and a number of other roads that were constructed during the development partners. The people of Kenya have told us, yes, we want the roads, yes, you can get the money, but not at transferring the cost of the pump by 7 shillings up, because they don't want the cost of living, because fuel also creates a problem across the sector. So we are now sitting, because we finished the public participation on Monday, and go and sit together with the Petroleum Department to see is there ways that some other levies or so forth can be foregone or something, so that we concentrate first on raising money for the roads. But as we do so, I think we will now see how we support your bridge. If we succeed in this endeavor, which I am hoping that we can do in 2 months or so, we will have additional resources a little bit, and we can save such bridges because of the danger and the problem it's causing the country. And I want to thank the senior counsel, my friend Senator Mogeni, because he's also been harassing me on the same issue in my office, and really, truly, it means this is something that means a lot to him and his constituents. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Cabinet Secretary. We'll take one supplementary question. Senator John Kinyo, is it in regards to this question? Okay, go ahead.
Asanti Bwana Spika kwa kunipa fursa hii. Asanti waziri kwa kuja na kuweka maneno pariwanja kulingana na vile ambavyo wizara yako iko na mambo ya barabara. Lakini swali langu ni kwamba nimesikia ukisema ya kwamba ulikisia utapata shilingi bilioni 165, ukapata shilingi bilioni 50. Na kuna zile barabara ambazo zinatengenezwa. Bwana waziri, unachagua vipi barabara ambayo utakayoitengeneza na ni gani ambayo hutaitengeneza? Ni masuala gani ambayo unaangalia? Ile ilianziwa kitambo, ile ambayo ina shughuli fulani, ama ni nini ambayo unaangazia? Kwa sababu nimesikia ukisema ya kwamba seneta wa kutoka Nyamira amekuwa kija kwako kwa ofisi. Mimi nimekuwa nikija kwako kwa ofisi. Najua maseneta wengi wamekuwa kija kwako kwa ofisi. Na hela ambazo uko nazo unasema hazitoshi. Sijui ni mbinu gani unatumia, ni kusema ya kwamba utatengeneza barabara moja katika sehemu ya Laikipia, ile nyingine utatengeneza katika sehemu ya Nyeri, ama ni yule ambaye atakaye kuja kwa ofisi yako mara nyingi, ama ni yule atakaye kupigia simu mara nyingi, ama ni rafiki yako, ama sijui niseme namna gani, lakini nataka utuelezee. Na nashukuru kwa sababu umeweka mambo pariwanja vile ambavyo Wakenya wangetaka, ndio wajue ya kwamba hela ambazo uko nazo na unazitumia vipi. Nashukuru Bwana Spika.
Asante Senator. Yes.
Bwana Spika, ningependa kusema kwanza kwamba katika bajeti ya barabara uwezo haiko katika mikono peke yake ya wizara. Bajeti inafanywa ama inapitishwa na bunge la kitaifa. Na wakati tunapitisha hiyo bajeti, Bwana Spika, hiyo bajeti inakuja kama tayari iko na hela zote, barabara gani itapewa hela ngapi. Kwa kimombo wanaita itemized budget. Wakati bajeti itapitishwa kama ile ilipitishwa hapo majuzi, ile schedule ambayo inapitisha ama ile daftari inaonyesha pesa zenye zinatumika, tayari inaweka barabara zote, kila barabara pesa zake. Ukiona zile barabara nilisoma hapo awali, nilionyesha wazi kwamba barabara fulani ilikuwa na bajeti kiasi hii, barabara fulani iko na bajeti kiasi hii, kiasi kwamba hata wakati huu, wakati hiyo schedule itakapotolewa kutoka treasury, pengine muda wote kutoka sasa, kila Mkenya atakuwa na uwezo ya kuangalia ni pesa ngapi iko kwa barabara yenye iko katika sehemu ama kaunti fulani. Ya swali la Mheshimiwa kinywa ile la kwanza ni la maana sana, lakini pia ni la kisiasa. Kisiasa kiasi it's a political decision. It's a political decision. Kwa sababu Mr. Speaker, kwa kuchanganya lugha, ni kwamba saa hizi ukisimama hapa useme katika wizara, kwa sababu tumepewa tu 58% ya ile fedha tunahitaji kumaliza barabara. Wacha niamue leo tuanzie Elgeyo Marakwet, tumalize barabara za Elgeyo Marakwet mwaka huu, ndio mwaka kesho tuende za Nyeri, alafu tuende ya Garissa. Kutakuwa na mvurutano kubwa sana katika taifa. Ndiposa unaona katika bajeti, hata katika bunge, kila mtu anapewa kidogo kidogo, kwa sababu ile milestone ifanywe katika kila step ya kila barabara. Kwa hivyo, allow me to repeat this, Mr. Speaker, in English, that many Kenyans are saying, why don't you take the little money? This year we are getting 25 billion out of we got last financial year, we got 25 billion out of a budget at 51 billion, out of a need of a pending bill of 165 billion. So the people of Kenya are saying, yes, you need 165, but why don't you take the 25 billion, finish Rironi Road from Wayaki to Rironi, and complete the interchanges, and they pay the contractor, or finish this road and do this. Mr. Speaker, that decision is not tenable politically for so many leaders and parliament itself when they are doing budget, because they want to make sure that every part of the country, their contractor is taking steps. The second and most difficult problem is that if you do not make an attempt to continue paying the contractors, the problem that will come in is that you are worsening the interest, okay? And some contractors will leave now site completely, and they will take action, legal action against the ministry and the agency. Therefore, to return them will become difficult. So for the 2 years, I have become a negotiator of some sort, at least thanks to my political and legal training. I have to call a contractor and say, we are paying you 20% of your required amount, but please go to site. We will try our best to make a case. And we are still doing so, and we believe that perhaps before the end of this year, we will have made a step to solve this problem. Mr. Speaker, if I may, I know it's not within my purview, if I may request, because all the questions are almost the same on the roads, if we, with your indulgence, if we would answer all the questions asked in the book, and then all supplementary questions come once, it may be useful so that we can combine those that are similar. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Very well, Cabinet Secretary. But before we proceed to the next question, Senator Beatrice Ogola, my apologies, we did not give you an opportunity to ask a supplementary question on question number 45. Do you have a supplementary question on Senator Oburu's?
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, and thank you for making that consideration. My supplementary question, based on the questions that the Honorable Dr. Oburu asked, were on the timelines. But I remember the CS had mentioned some timelines on the two questions. But my other concern, CS, is that you've talked about the inadequacies with our finances, which we all know. Then what happens then with the massive problems we have on our roads after the massive floods that just ended? That is now a general question, but it points to the inadequate finances you are talking about, and yet all over the country, not specific to Siaya now, we have broken roads after the floods. Thank you.
Cabinet Secretary.
Mr. Speaker, thank you very much. In brief, so that I save time, this question is very important, Honorable Senator, but it goes to the other question about road maintenance levy, because restoration of the floods, roads affected by the floods, is actually maintenance. And from the maintenance kitty, I had already explained myself that we are running low or short of resources to be able to do so. So the best thing for us is, as I responding to Senator Mogeni earlier, I said that if we make a case and succeed to get some resources enhanced, we will then be able to deal with this floods mitigation in terms of the roads. The assessment we did after the floods, both for the El Nino and these ones that happened early this year, is that we need 37 billion shillings to restore, just to restore to where the stage where they were, which is a very big issue for us and a big challenge for the ministry. But that will be resolved a little bit or mitigated a little bit if we were going to get something from an enhanced road maintenance levy collection.
Thank you, Cabinet Secretary. We go to the next question, question number 58 by Senator Professor Tom Ojenda.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Question number 58, addressed to the Cabinet Secretary Roads and Transport, is on Kenya Airways. Specifically, Mr. Speaker, to what extent is the government's involvement in the operational matters of KQ, specifically regarding the protection and welfare of staff? Part B, could the Cabinet Secretary provide details of KQ staff that have lost their employment as a result of redundancies and retrenchment since 2010, and explain what necessitated the workforce reductions? Part C, was the procedure followed during the exercise lawful, and could the CS indicate whether all benefits due to the affected staff have or were paid? D, how many retrenchment cases by the organization have been found to be against the law? And could the Cabinet Secretary state the number of retrenched staff re-employed by KQ, if any, and what informed the decision? Lastly, Mr. Speaker, sir, what impact has court pronouncements through judgments had on job redundancies by KQ and retrenchment policy practices and the attendant send-off packages at KQ? I beg, Mr. Speaker, sir.
Thank you very much, Senator. Cabinet Secretary, because of time, I will use the standing orders to extend this sitting for a further 15 minutes so that you can conclude question number 58.
Thank you. So, Speaker, let me say that unfortunately, I may not be able to meet the expectations of the Senior Counsel and Honorable Senator, because the government of Kenya holds a significant stake in Kenya Airways, approximately 48.9% of the shares. It is represented on the board of Kenya Airways through the National Treasury and our Ministry of Transport. However, operational matters, including those related to protection and welfare of staff, are primarily the responsibility of the Kenya Airways itself. These operational issues are typically addressed and managed by the management and leadership of Kenya Airways. Kenya Airways is not really a parastatal per se, where we have proper access to all this information, Mr. Speaker, and I do not want to commit myself to answers that they would write to me, because then the interrogation would have to come to this ministry and would have to answer. The best way forward, we suggest from the ministry, is to invite Kenya Airways as Kenya Airways, so that they take responsibility as Kenya Airways, preferably, Mr. Speaker, to a committee, so that these issues can be dealt with comprehensively. I thank you.
Thank you, Cabinet Secretary. Senator Ojenda.
As the Minister has indicated, obviously his response is unsatisfactory. I will, Mr. Speaker, sir, in view of the response that the Minister circulated on the need to interrogate Kenya Airways, the question of shareholding arises the law. I note that government has 48% shareholding, but there is the other question of the public interest that also arises, and that creates an obligation. I will visit the minister and share with him some precedents on this question, even as I will then come back. I'll make sure he comes back to answer the question, because he cannot run away from the problem of Kenya Airways.
Thank you, Senator. Honorable Senator, since we've extended the sitting for another 15 minutes, Senator Munyihaji, we are not taking any supplementary questions at the moment. We'll take supplementary questions at the end. That's what we've agreed. We are going to the next question. There's no point of order. Senator Osoti. Sorry? What is your point of order?
Mr. Speaker, you know we have so many questions to ask the Cabinet Secretary, and the time is very limited. I am seeing a situation where the Cabinet Secretary is taking too much time trying to explain, and yet he has a written response. So I think he will save on time if he focuses on the written response, and then we can create time for supplementary questions.
Correct. Senator Osotsi, the Cabinet Secretary has not actually spent a lot of time on the written response. He's been actually very brief. So anyways, because of time, well, let's go to the next question, which is actually raised by you, Senator Osotsi. If you could ask question number 59, so that we can proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, the Cabinet Secretary, for appearing to answer my question. I want to ask question number 59, and it reads, could the Cabinet Secretary provide the criteria used by the Kenya Rural Roads Authority, KERA, in the allocation of funds to counties for the period April to June 2024, and explain why only 4 counties, including Vihiga County and Garissa County, where you come from, Mr. Speaker, were left out in the allocation. Number 2, what measures have been put in place by the ministry to ensure that KERA funds are not misappropriated through skewed procurement and political interference in the awarding of road construction contract? And this, Mr. Speaker, mainly touches on the 10% and 22%. Number 3, what steps is the ministry taking to eliminate duplicity in awarding contracts for the construction and maintenance of rural roads and avert misappropriation of funds? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Cabinet Secretary. Mr. Speaker, I beg to respond as follows. The allocation of funds to counties is defined by the provisions of the Kenya Roads Act 2007, where 22% of the roads maintenance levy fund is allocated for the maintenance of constituency roads and the 10% for maintenance of link roads between constituencies. These allocations are shared equally across all the 290 constituencies in the 47 counties, with variations only resulting from the number of constituencies per county. Consequently, the funds disbursed to counties in the period in question constituted a second tranche of the 10% of road maintenance levy fund allocation shared equally as outlined above. Vihiga County received 20 million in this tranche, being 44 million per constituency. And closer are the details of the allocations to each county for 10% RMLF as Appendix 1 and 22% RMLF as Appendix 2. The allocation for maintenance under the development budget is mainly guided by Parliament in the allocation of public participation initiatives and other pressing emergencies that Parliament may consider necessary. The Ministry may allocate development funds for maintenance based on critical areas to be addressed, such as mitigation against flood damage and other emergency interventions. Due to limited budget ceiling available to the State Department of Roads, KERA is unable to allocate funds to all critical areas. Allocated funds should be enough to address the particular challenge and realize value for money, as a thin spread funds would result in ineffective allocation with little to show from the spread. The procurement of roadworks in KERA, number 2, the procurement of roadworks in KERA adheres to the Public Procurement and Asset Disposals Act, PPDA 2015, as amended in 2022, including PPDA regulations of 2020. Key controls in line with PPDA 2015 include open tendering for the roadworks, restricted tendering through a pre-qualified list, publishing all tenders on the authority's website and the Public Procurement Information Portal, PPIP, strict adherence to awarding at least 30% of the contracts to special groups in line with ACPO. 3, to prevent duplicity in roadworks, the ministry undertakes several measures. A, sharing annual roadworks program with all relevant agencies, including county governments. B, ensuring adequate consultation with county governments when roads under their purview are prioritized by the Constituency Roads Committee for maintenance works and entering into memorandum of understanding as applicable. C, notifying the public through various platforms, including media channels and public boards, about ongoing project scope of works, and contractor details and other salient information. Number D is conducting internal audit and rigorous quality control measures, including material testing, to ensure that there is value for money. And E, collaborating with statutory and regulatory entities responsible for oversight and monitoring of roadworks, including technical auditors, parliamentary committees, and the Office of Auditor General, to ensure prudent utilization of public resources. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Osotsi, supplementary question.
Thank you, Cabinet Secretary, for your answer. But looking at the first part of the question, which talks about the allocation of funds to the counties between April and June 2024, the Cabinet Secretary is a bit general on this matter. I would have thought that he will bring a list of all the counties and what was allocated. Because the list I have, it indicates that money for the maintenance of road, and this is outside the RMLF, that was allocated within that period, 4 counties, including Vihiga County and your county, Mr. Speaker, were left out. So this is the list I would wish the Cabinet Secretary to make reference to, and not the roads maintenance levy fund, which, as we know, it is at 22%, and also the 10%, which is for maintenance of roads that link constituencies. So I'm referring to that listing of funds which were given to the counties between April and June. That indicates that my county got nil. Number 2, the answers to question 2 and 3, Mr. Speaker, that is the best case scenario. But Mr. Speaker, we know that the carer funds, which are under the management of members of parliament, are misappropriated. And that's a fact. And this is something that we discussed the whole of last week and this week. The 22% and the 10%. So the answer there, as much as it looks very good, but the situation on the ground, Vituko ground, is different. Number 3, Mr. Speaker, the issue of duplicity in road maintenance and construction. This is a serious problem, Mr. Speaker, that county puts money on a road, the member of parliament puts the money on that same road, and in some places even the MCA, the same road, and the carer, the same road. And you end up having a situation where public money is misused. So the answer given by the Cabinet Secretary to me is not adequate, and the Cabinet Secretary needs to go on the ground to get the real facts about this problem, which we all know as senators. It's happening in our counties. So, Mr. Speaker, the answers given by the Cabinet Secretary is very inadequate.
Thank you,
and
sir.
I expected that the Cabinet Secretary, having been a senator in this House, would respond very well to question number 2 and number 3. Because these are challenges we go through, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Senator. Cabinet Secretary.
Mr. Speaker, first of all, the truth is that every constituency gets enough, the same money from carer, exactly the same. Last year, last financial year, 62 million for every constituency in the Republic, because the law itself, the Kenya Roads Boards Act 207, Section 6, makes it mandatory to that it be shared equally across the country. So Vihiga gets its fair share of its constituency. How it is advertised is different for every constituency at different time, depending on the constituency roads committees, meetings, and so forth. So you would have picked the period, under the answer I gave, you picked a period where there was an advert going out for that county with many other counties across the country in relation to that only figure. But cumulatively, when you finish the financial year, depending on how the planning was done for every constituency, it will eventually lead to 62 million shillings. Number two, Mr. Speaker, I don't think it is, the last time I was in this house before I left, and I still think it is the same, it is not right to impute an improper motive to the other chamber. It is for the committee and good working relationship with two chambers of parliament, it is important not to generalize a debate about National Assembly and the Senate. And therefore, because, Mr. Speaker, even when my eyes are thrown around the House, I see three former members of National Assembly who managed constituencies and worked with the Constituency Roads Committee, Honorable Omenen, Honorable Tobiko, Honorable Gisang. All of them have a good history about how the carer works with constituencies. And Honorable Abbas also is here. So by and large, and as we progress, there are more people who are coming from National Assembly to work here, and there are people who live here to find themselves in National Assembly, and I know a number of them when we work together, and then others who become governors, as I suspect the honorable member is one of the suspects. So, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, this kind of arrangement requires us to make sure that we find our ways. In fact, Mr. Speaker, when I came here first to this chamber, I used to have a problem with CDF and money going to constituency. But as I progressed towards the second term, I asked myself, is it better to go to my constituency, say Marakwet East, where I come from, and go and fight with the Constituency Roads Committee people I know and fight with the MP? Or is it better for me to centralize all resources to Nairobi so that I come and fight in Nairobi with so many other people? And I told myself, decentralization, even for resources that remain with national government, using this method where the money goes to the constituency, is easier for me to go and deal with characters on the ground whom I know and hold them into account than to keep the money at the headquarters here and shroud it with a lot of mystery. And I worked very well with my honorable members, including Senator Gisang here, in a way that we've made sure that the CDF funds schools, funds classes, in a way that mitigates this issue of marginalization across the country. Mr. Speaker, I agree with Honorable Otsotsi on one thing, Senator Otsotsi, that the problem of duplication is real. But, Mr. Speaker, it's not general. It's specific to certain areas, and it's a problem we are grappling with, even with the ministry. And what we have done is to make sure that we sign MOUs with counties that request carer that you can maintain these roads. We have also expedited the process of graduating the roads from through Kenya Roads Boards, handed over from counties to national government and gazetted, so that if we find counties still maintaining a road that is already gazetted at national level, it becomes now easy for the Auditor General to point out this issue of double allocation. This area, especially in marginalized counties, this area of allocation of devolved roads money is still a little bit, the accountability is not up to date, and it's something we are working with on the ministry. And it's good to acknowledge as it is, but it's not general in such a way that I would say even Vihiga is a victim. What Senator Osotsi can help me do is that in cases where there is an actual evidence that this is happening in this place, he can give me the information, even if it is not publicly, privately, because I don't need to fight with the MP. The regional manager or the regional director of the agency carer, we will hold him into account. I don't know the MP and I don't know the committees that are happening there. Eventually, the responsibility is with the regional director, and that's the person I will hold into account, that the money is allocated to where they have told us it's allocated. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much, CS. Next question number 58 by Senator Professor Tom Ojenda.
Mr. Speaker, question number question number 61 to the CS Cabinet Secretary, Roads and Transport. Mr. Speaker, this question is in 5 parts. Part 1, is the ministry currently undertaking real-time mapping of all roads, bridges, and other transport infrastructure affected by the April-May 2024 unprecedented rains and floods? And if so, could the CS roads provide a list of all affected transport infrastructure across the country? B, what flood mitigation measures are required to bring each affected infrastructure to a state where it can withstand the rains and floods, especially in Lamu, currently being witnessed in the country, and what are the budgetary implications of such improvements? C, could the Cabinet Secretary outline the obligation of the national government vis-à-vis those of the county governments regarding the reconstruction of each transport infrastructure affected by floods? D, what long-term measures are being implemented to address the poor drainage system throughout the major cities and towns, bearing in mind Narok, ensuring that such occurrences do not repeat in the future, and what are the budgetary implications of these actions? Lastly, Mr. Speaker, sir, what steps are being taken to compensate victims of past transport infrastructure engineering that resulted in changes in the path and course of various rivers, hence the flooding of some homes and human settlements that naturally were not in the path of those rivers, taking into account Nairobi River? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Cabinet Secretary.
Mr. Speaker, I confirm that the ministry, through its road agencies, is actively undertaking real-time monitoring and mapping of infrastructure affected by the unusually heavy rains during the period of April, May 2024, as well as the El Nino rains of October to December 2023. This initiative aims to facilitate timely repair and reconstruction efforts. The detailed report on the observed damage to our transport infrastructure is presented herewith. The required mitigation measures vary depending on the structure and type of road pavement. Road structures such as bridges and culverts are designed to handle abnormal flows over specific return period without incurring damage. To carry out the necessary reinstatement works, comprehensive hydrological and hydraulic studies are conducted to inform the redesign of the structures. Subsequently, the required works include the reinstatement of structures, enhancement of drainage systems, protection of works, rebuilding of embankments, and redesign of road pavement and alignments. The proposed budget to facilitate these activities is annexed here with Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, sir, according to 4th schedule of the Constitution, the national government is responsible for the construction and operation of national trunk roads and set standards of construction and maintenance of roads by both national and county government. The county government is responsible for the construction and operation of county roads. From this, it is evident that the national government ensures that national trunk roads meet the required standards for safety, durability, and resilience against the natural disasters such as floods. In setting standards for counties, the national government provides technical expertise, guidance on materials, construction methods, and maintenance practices to be followed by county governments. The county government, on the other hand, ensures accessibility and maintains roads to passable and safe for all users. Both levels of government must collaborate in assessing and planning the reconstruction and infrastructure affected by floods and instituting flood mitigation measures. Number 4, the ministry is currently reviewing its road design manuals to incorporate flood mitigation design principles, ensuring more resilient infrastructure capable of withstanding climate change challenges. The securing of waterways is ongoing to support this very important initiative.
Cabinet Secretary, thank you for appearing. Just as a point of information, the SPC has indicated that the remaining questions shall be deferred to next week. So I hope we will have you again. That's how much we like you, Cabinet Secretary.
Thank you.
And then we'll have you again next week to appear in this House. Honorable Senators, it is now 1:15 p.m. Having concluded the business of which I extended the hours of sitting pursuant to Standing Order 34-2A, the Senate stands adjourned until today, Wednesday, 10th July 2024 at 2:30 p.m.